everybody, it is Calxiyn and Hunter here, and thank you for attending Calxyn's Royal Court today, where we have gathered to discuss RWBY Roman Holiday, and we are laying it all out today. It is all spoilers all the time type situation type thing.
Pretty comprehensive spoilers, judging by the mountain of
notes. Okay, not all these pages are full, but like I'll just show you guys.
Okay.
Right, I think that's chapter 11, chapter 25. So we have like, you know, about this much of notes here. And these are usually more like I'm gonna call it a podcast style, kind of a live stream style, except we're not live, where we're just gonna talk about the book. And so I'll try to put timestamps like chapter by chapter and everything like that, so you can see our segmented discussions about each chapter individually. But we'll probably jump around and talk about like, you know, stuff that happened in like chapter 8, like when we talk about chapter 1, because maybe there's something in chapter 1 that's related to chapter 8. I don't know, but we're just gonna get right into it. So how did we like the book, first of all? Now let's talk about,
we talked about that in our kind of non-spoiler one, but broadly I think we both liked it.
But now we can talk about spoilers, right?
Yes.
So I think now we can actually go like into it, right? Yeah, so I think that the thing is that Neo's life as trivia was kind of boring as fuck.
Like the first half was
exactly. But
I mean, I was interested in it because trivia, that thing that I really liked about, I fully expected it to be like, yeah, these people are villains because they steal stuff, but they would be likable and they wouldn't do really heinous shit. They do heinous shit.
Yeah.
They do times where I'm just like, oh my god, like how could you even, why are you like this, Neo?
Yeah, that is true. But I think that was kind of the point. Like, I think that the point was
that's definitely
to, like,
the point.
drive you to the Roman chapter and be like, Roman's life is so interesting, so intriguing, so full of crime and girls and money and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas Neo, right? And so
it's just really fucked.
Exactly. I kind of described this idea of like, I want to just get to the Roman chapter,
I didn't feel that way.
Well, I didn't feel it like overly. I wasn't skipping stuff, obviously, but I felt it like deep down.
Because even the early Roman chapters was just kind of him, because they don't meet. Neo and Roman don't meet until halfway
the midway,
through the book.
right? But I think that was the point. Like, I think that's what E.C. Myers wanted to do, was to make Neo's life kind of repetitive and unbearable, so you really felt how she was feeling, right? You wanted to feel that sort of thing.
I got the impression that it was unbearable, but maybe not repetitive.
Repetitive in the sense that,
she breaks crime. She does crime and breaks too many rules for it to be truly repetitive.
Well, I mean, for her,
I guess
so. She breaks some rules. Her parents like tell her to talk, and they'll forget about it, and then it happens again and again and again, right? And so that's what I mean by repetitive. Like, she does go on like new adventures, but the end result is the same. Like, she's trying to do this for her parents' attention, but then, like, you know, she gets it for a moment. They are like, hey, if there was a time to speak for yourself, speak up now, sort of thing, right? And then she doesn't, and then it happens again. Like, it just keeps happening, and like, her parents don't understand why she keeps acting out, right? And so I feel like that's kind of what I mean, you know? I think because it does happen twice. Like, her father, I think, says it maybe 3 times, the same dialogue from chapter 1 when she first gets in trouble. Right? So I think that's, I guess, what I mean by, like, the repetition of it, is that they get caught in this cycle, and that cycle doesn't really break until she goes to, like, the boarding school and stuff like that. But I think overall, like, I really liked the book. I did. Like, despite some of the other problems I had with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, somebody did make a good point about, like, when I said, like, oh, you know, like, there's metal in Remnant, there's, you know, fossil fuel in Remnant, like, what's happening? They did make a good point that, like, of course there was metal in Remnant, because what are the weapons made out of? Like, it was always kind of present. But I guess that's a problem, right?
But I guess, like, when you think about Remnant, you don't think of modernity.
Exactly.
But this one was kind of steeped in modernity.
And so I think that person did make a good point. Like, even in the show in the first place, there was clearly metal,
and
right?
We
have big metal shoe too, as well, right? But like, those things have to exist. Like, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing to explain, but think about, like, the only reason we have fossil fuel is because of the dinosaurs, right?
And plant fauna.
And plant and stuff, like, from when the world did the boom, and then, you know what I mean, they all died.
Anthropology from Cal.
Exactly. And so, right, like, how do these things happen if there is no, like, occurrences like there are on Earth. And I know that's, like, a very, like, nitpicky thing.
Unless they're, like, cars are run off by dust and they're less
Well, I think cars are run by dust, because we see that in Volume 7, don't we? We see the little dust monitor on, like, the engine and stuff. But I'm saying in terms of what things are actually made out of and stuff like that, I don't know. Like, that's something that interests me in, like, a nerdy way, is that I think it would have been interesting if they were like, well, there is metal dust, and you break down the metal dust, and then you can smelt it or something. I don't know how this shit works, okay? I'm just saying that, like, that's sort of, like, something that interests me is when a fantasy world has, like, our world elements, but those elements, I think, like, you all right actually said this, and I can't actually remember if this is, like, said in the show or not, but he said, like, why are the days of the week still called the days of the week if the days of the week are only called that because of the gods and the Roman people, right?
Like Thursday means Thursday.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, or like, you know, the October and like all that stuff. Like all of the months were named because of Julius Caesar, right?
That's the issue.
I don't know.
I mean,
don't quote me on that, okay? I have no idea.
That's the issue with like high fantasy.
But
is that
to my counter argument, I don't actually remember them saying the days of the week in the show. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember why you all right posted that. This is not a call out, by the way, but he's just like, that's an example of something. If a character did say that and I just fucking forgot, right? Like that's a good example of like something that you would need to trace back somehow, right? And so that's kind of why I like it when like fantasy worlds have their own like days of the week and their own like time systems, because that's the other thing, right? Like the moon is broken, so like would time work differently? Would they have different hours of the day?
Like the month wouldn't break up the same way?
Exactly. So it's, I don't know, very fascinating stuff. But yeah, anyway, why are we talking about this? I forgot.
Because you have ADHD.
I know. The medication hasn't kicked in yet. Oh dear. And so
now all your digressions suddenly make a lot more sense, Cal.
Don't they in the context of this? But
but tonally I felt like it could be a little I didn't have that much of an issue. My issue was more with pacing.
Oh yeah, and it was stealing the coffee. That was the part where I thought that was like,
yeah, and there's
really?
like a Starbucks in Vale. It's called, what is it called? It's called Just Right.
Yeah, something like that, right? And so I thought that was like sort of funny. That's like somewhere in these mountains of notes, right? And so I thought that was kind of funny too, because it's just like, I don't know, Vale just seemed, and I get it, that's kind of part of the joke, right? Because Neo suggests to steal some dust.
Magic beans.
Yeah, so I think that's the brand, maybe not the name of the restaurant or whatever. But like, I did think that was funny, by the way. But like,
also there's a Dr. Pepper instead of Dr. Pepper.
Yes.
That threw me off.
Like the Pied Piper, I guess, right? And so I thought that was kind of funny. But that's what I mean. Like Neo says, like, oh, you know, Roman, you should steal dust. And Roman's like, well, yeah, I've heard that before, but actually, let's go steal this coffee, right? And so that's the only thing where I'm just like, I don't know, like it's funny and it's kind of like,
I just wish they
quirky.
thought of something. It's quirky, but I wish they thought of something more interesting than just heisting coffee.
Yeah, I don't know.
Even if I did like those
chapters. I feel like, you know what's gonna be funny? So I feel like there was a missed opportunity to make the RWBY coffee that they announced Team Coffee branded, right? Like they did this Mistral, this Mistral bean situation. Like it was from like Mistral, like as the continent or something, and that's what they called it. I feel like what if the coffee integration is because they are going to make like a coffee,
like the magic bean.
Exactly. Like what if that's why? Anyway,
well, most RWBY fans probably won't end up reading that book, and they'll just be confused and be like, "Oh, I guess that's a fairy tale magic bean."
I guess, but you know what I mean? Like I don't know. That's what I was
guess
sort
that's
of thinking.
another thing that I felt broadly about this is that it's like about two criminals, so I kind of wanted it to be a crime story,
right?
But it didn't feel as much like a crime story.
At least not until the second half, right?
But it felt more like a spy story once you learn about like the whole espionage thing that's going on.
Yeah, the boarding school and everything.
The boarding school. It just took a really weird turn, and I'm like, I kind of wanted something more along the lines of like a kind of Pulp Fiction-y Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Like these two people stuck in an impossible situation related to crime and gangs and trying to get themselves out.
I did like though how they did like Neo and Roman's character a lot.
Oh,
right?
I agree.
And so I guess this beginning is just going to be our not our vague thoughts, I guess, but like you guys understand, right? And so I think overview, exactly. And so I think what's going to be interesting is, I guess, seeing how some of these things come back in like the show proper, if they do, like going into Neo's feelings more. And what's interesting about Neo, I think specifically, is like she is kind of a psychopath.
She really is. She's
like,
a motherfucker.
Born psychopath, right? Because like she says stuff sometimes.
She has a pretty.
Right?
She has a pretty severe empathy deficit.
Yes, because when her parents die, she's like, I don't know if I care, right? And so that you can understand based off what they did, but she also like drugs the teacher at one point and doesn't really show any remorse. And there are a bunch of scenes like that where you know what it was?
She almost kills her dad
later on
when she's angry.
Yeah, well, that's like you could say, but like the parents were, neglectful. But I'm saying
great.
In terms of like
they weren't great parents, but like
totally just like no empathy at all is like when the lady I have a whole theory about that, by the way. So you guys are like, what is Cal talking about? The lady that works with High. Right? So this is going to be confusing if you haven't read the book, but High is Junior's dad.
Yes.
And he is the opposing crime boss. He's a crime boss of Vale.
Mm-hmm.
He has like a lady friend or something. He has like a secretary. I can't remember what they called her. I think they called her, I don't think they called her anything.
It was like a number 2, basically.
Yeah, I think maybe they called her like Stella or something. Maybe I just made that up. Who the fuck knows? Anyway, and so she basically like steals an airship. Right? Neo steals the airship and she like lets her out of the airlock and she's like, does she have a parachute? I don't know,
like
right? And that lady didn't do anything to them, you know what I mean?
Not
and
really.
so that's kind of the interest. Oh yes, it is Stella. I was right. So Stella is his associate. So Neo basically like steals the plane and everything, and they get into the plane. Neo lets out all the men basically, and they fall out of the plane. Apparently they have parachutes, but Stella may be dead, and Neo doesn't care. That's what I wrote down because she's just like, did Stella have one? Right, she doesn't know, and she doesn't give a shit.
I mean,
right?
she's a criminal, but it's just so weird that she just seems like not a violent.
But I like that. I like that for Neo though, because it shows that from the very beginning, she just kind of has like a disregard
for human life.
Other people. Like if they don't, not if they're not useful to her.
She really liked Roman.
Yes, exactly.
Like she's not a total sociopath because she still has a connection and she's still like.
But she's definitely really, like anyone that I don't have a connection to. If you're not
Roman, I will you at the earliest opportunity.
And it's not even that she enjoys it per se, but she doesn't think about how she's impulsive almost. She doesn't think about how that action of opening the airlock, or she does, but then she doesn't care if Stella doesn't have a parachute. Oh well, right? Like, you know what I mean? Doesn't matter. So that's sort of the vibe there. But let's get into the actual chapters now. And you guys are going to see me do this a couple times because I'm making timestamps for the poor YouTube viewers that just want to go through chapter by chapter with us. And so that's kind of our little overview, our little opening discussion. So let's talk about chapter 1, right? And so some people are saying that the 10-year age gap thing is actually correct and we did the math wrong.
I've heard that.
I read that a couple times. Like some people plotted it out and they were like, you can tell because of the scene in chapter such and such where the stories intersect and then Roman sees the Trivia's house burn down. But I was like, but that was the part I used to do the math to get the 5-year age gap. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day,
10 or 5 years, I don't know.
I just wanted to talk about that.
If anything, I think Neo can handle herself.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, because I feel
if anything, I would be concerned about the older person with Neo.
Some people are going to find that, I guess, like, problematic in a way, but here's, I guess, how I see it in terms of Remnant. Like, something that we need to remember is that in Remnant, 17 years old is, like, basically going to university. If you're old enough to get killed, you know what I mean? You are old enough to go out and to kill Grimm and to get killed in battle. Like, and so that's just sort of, like, one of those things where it's, like, school works differently there because the age of maturity or the age of, like, being an adult is also seen as different, right? Like, RWBY got into Beacon 2 years early, right? But everybody else, when they got into Beacon, it was basically their college or university, right?
Yes.
So I feel like that's something for us to keep in mind, is that sort of thing. And, like, the other thing is that I feel like that people would have a point if Roman knew Neo from when she was a kid, but they didn't meet until they were both adults. Yeah. And so I feel like that that's a very important, like, distinction in all of this. And there was a rumor going around before the book came out that that was the case. But that was, like, total lie for discourse and to make the book, I guess, look bad and everything. And so, yeah, that did not happen. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because chapter 1 starts with Neo being 8 years old. It's her 8th birthday as of chapter 1. And so at this point, Neapolitan is the imaginary friend, whereas Trivia is Neo, and like her hair is like all brown. So like I guess that's kind of the distinction right now, is that this is the point in Neo's life. This is gonna get confusing. This is the point in Neo's life where she is Trivia, or she takes the name Trivia, and she has no I don't know how to explain it, no physical features that distinct the Neo portion at this moment, right? And so what I thought was interesting about this chapter is that Trivia wasn't allowed in the family room, right? And so I thought that that was kind of like, maybe some people would find that to be a blunt symbolism, but I think that that's actually very interesting because,
that one went over my head.
The family room is full of like pretty expensive things that cannot be touched and that she cannot engage with because she is not part of the family. Like her parents don't consider her part of the family, I guess, in a way, because she's basically kept a secret. Like they talk about that throughout the book. And so Neo wears a frilly pink princess dress and white gloves at this moment, right? And so I feel like that very much fits in with the imaginary friend type aspect of it, because think about it, like the Neo that we know now, right, is not very like frilly princess, but when you're a child and you enjoy fairy tales like Neo says that she does, like what's kind of the, I don't know, I guess the go-to for a lot of young children when they have imaginary friends is those sorts of like fantasy characters, you know what I mean? Like I think a lot of like people probably had like an imaginary friend that was like a princess or a dragon or a knight or Elsa or something, you know what I mean? Or like, you know, literally a Disney princess or something like that. So I think that's kind of interesting because yes, that is kind of who Neo is now, right? Like she has the gloves, she does have the pink, right? And there is some traits in here of the imaginary friend that do carry over, like she's elegant and graceful and acrobatic, right? And obviously we see that later, but it's just, it's kind of interesting how when you're a kid, like the height of like, I don't know, fantasy or play or something, like the height of what you imagine yourself to be, especially, you know, like I guess I'm just saying from personal experience as a little girl, is like a frilly princess.
When I was a little girl plotting my parents' death and looking at my schizophrenic delusions.
I'm just saying, she's not schizophrenic, by the way. Hunter's just joking. But you know, that's
see things that aren't there.
But she makes them.
I guess so.
Right? Yeah. She's, you know what I mean? So it's a bit different, right? And so basically what I'm getting at is that's, I don't know, that was very relatable to me, I guess, is basically what I'm saying, because that's kind of the height of like, you know, like, oh yeah, like, when I like grow up, I want to be a princess, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the height of like what you think is like, I don't want to say, I don't know how to say it. Not
height of luxury.
Exactly, luxury or like a position of like power or something. That's the best thing that you can be. You know what I mean? Is like a frilly princess, basically, something like that, right? And so they say they're basically playing like the floor is lava, like they're playing like games together, which is kind of interesting. And so what's interesting is Trivia is cautious while Neo is graceful, right? So Trivia is very slow and like cautious while Neo is like graceful and acrobatic and things like that. And I think that's important because like what we have to understand is that like Neo and Trivia, I'm not gonna say they fuse in a way, but like Neo was always part of Trivia, and I think that we still see that in the show. Like we still see the Trivia aspects of Neo that she has just now embraced as also being part of Neo all along. It's kind of confusing when you talk about it that way, but like, for example, we do see scenes where she is very slow. Like, you know, she's slow and she's sneaky to like stab RWBY, right? When she's pretending to be that other person in disguise, right? In volume 8. So we still see like the slow, like cautious, like plotting Neo, and then we see also like the graceful, elegant Neo. And so I think that like basically Neo embraces Trivia as being part of herself like throughout the book. Instead of just discarding Trivia entirely, she embraces Neo and she embraces Trivia for that sense of balance. Like I feel like that's kind of what it is like Neo is almost the epitome of like balance. I like how they didn't go the angle of I'm going to discard your entire personality or I'm going to discard this and take off the entirety of Neo, you know?
They become kind of one.
Exactly. They become one versus I'm not trivia anymore, throw trivia in the trash. You know what I mean? Like, instead, it's like, no, I'm gonna keep the parts of trivia that I want and also embrace the parts of Neo that I want. Which I think is better because I think that's more of a cliche.
Did Neo have fully pink hair?
Yes, Neo did have fully pink hair.
So her split hair is kind of a manifestation of that. Then.
Yes, exactly. She did have, like, trivia always had the mismatched eyes, but, like, you could say that that's almost a metaphor for internally. Yes. Yeah. She was always
eyes are the windows to the soul.
Exactly. Oh my god, I'm getting chills, Hunter. Exactly. And so, yeah, that's, like, kind of the thing about, like, the eyes and everything is, like, that at first, because that threw us off, I think. When we were first reading the preview chapter, we were like, but why would she have the mismatched eyes if she's not really, like, Neo or whatever, right? Because at first we were like, oh my god, like, what if Neo is a real person and she's a squatter in the house and, like, you know what I mean? This trivia girl is just, like, a red herring or something, right? But anyway, all of that to say, I kind of like how they did the mismatched eyes from the very beginning because it shows that she was always trivia and Neo all along from the very start, even if her hair, like, was brown until a certain point and everything. Because it would have been more cliche to do the I'm not that person anymore, throw that person in the trash. I like how they fused instead. I think that that's a lot better. So the dad is the city manager for the Vale Council. He holds her by the ankles, which is kind of, I'm gonna say interesting, but the only reason I'm saying that is because, like, later on she says that she has never been, like, hit by her father before, and that comes as a shock to her. And so I wonder if that's a case of Neo being an unreliable narrator in a way, because she tells the police that she's not being abused, and you could read that as, like, she's lying to the police. But later on, she's genuinely surprised when her dad almost takes a physical action against her in a later chapter, but he did take a physical action against her here. And I know that the ankle holding isn't the same as hitting, but that's still, I would say that that's a bit more fucked up. Like, to hold your child by the ankles as if they're like a rabbit or something, you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't even do that to a cat or a dog, right? And so I feel like that's almost a bit more fucked up. So what I'm wondering is that based off of this first chapter, is Neo an unreliable narrator in some way where she has been physically you know, abused by the parents, but for some reason she can't remember it later on in the book.
I'm only smiling through
this
discussion.
What are you thinking about right now?
I'm only smiling through this discussion because my dad has grabbed me by the ankles and, like, yoinked me upside down.
But that's different. That's loving. That's not...
I don't remember if I was loving.
Was it loving? Were you in trouble?
I think I was, like, running under a deck, and my dad just, like, he yoinked me out from the bottom.
Okay.
I wasn't in trouble.
Anyway, well, Hunter rethinks their entire childhood now. Let's
Joke's on
on
you. There's someone named, like, Gatherer, and they have green hair, and they're my they're my secret, like,
imaginary friend.
Yeah, double side.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so yes.
One day I'm gonna start doing tax fraud, and I'll have green hair, half brown hair, and I'll be Gatherer.
So what's interesting is that we do have, like, name puns. So Jimmy is supposed to be sprinkles, and then caramel, like, toppings that
I didn't realize the Jimmy is sprinkles.
Right?
When you explain that to me, like, my head exploded.
I know, right? I really like that. Some of the other names in the book, though, are a little bit bad.
There's a Candy
Not
Floss.
bad, but they're just, like, corny.
Candy Floss is like it sounds like a My Little Pony.
Oh my god.
All these names end up sounding like a My Little Pony.
So the dad says, say something, anything, and we'll forget this ever happened, right? And so I kind of see the parents as a bit more, I'm not going to say morally gray, because they are very neglectful and, like, kind of bad people, but I do also wonder...
they don't love their child for who she is. They want her to be a version of them, like, of herself.
I do wonder, though, like, I kind of, at least here, I did have, like, some empathy for them, because I was thinking, like, it must be very scary to be in this situation where you're just desperate for your child to speak. Because later he does say something, I just want to hear my little girl's voice for the first time. And I can imagine that is very... that's very hard to deal with and very, like, stressful, and not necessarily stressful, but I guess it's one of those things where you have, I guess, ideas of how your children will be, you know, before they are born.
But I feel like his downfall is instead of adjusting those expectations.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna get at. So in this first chapter, I think, and even kind of like later on at some portions, I did kind of feel bad for him, but I think the fault is is
I think
not
I felt more
adjusting.
bad for the mom in certain places.
Yeah, it's kind of a mixture.
She was just kind of disappointed.
I don't want to say I feel bad for him in the sense that I'm defending him. I don't want people to have that takeaway, right?
It's like I have a certain amount of sympathy for everyone involved.
I guess I understand where these emotions come from, sir, but you need therapy. Is I guess like that's kind of the idea. So I think that was kind of interesting about the parents.
You need to calm down. Right? Your daughter will be fine. She won't be fine.
It's almost like
she becomes a terrorist.
This is a strange comparison, but it's almost like when parents, find out that their child is like gay or bi, right? And they sort of like, they had the dreams of their daughter like going down the aisle at the wedding or something with a man, right? And so, if your parents persist after that point of initial shock, that's when they're like, problematic. But I do have sympathy for that initial, like, I feel as if my dreams are being destroyed, like, for this, like, one moment, right? And so it's about adjusting. If your parents adjust after that and they're like, you know what? I had these dreams for you, but, like, it's okay. I still love you. I'm gonna support you. You will go to the wedding however you please. Or if you don't want to get married, right? Like, that sort of attitude, right? Like, if they support you after that initial emotional shock, then, like, that's different compared to being, I guess, stuck in their way. And so that's how I see the parents in this book, almost, is they are stuck in trying to push something that they already know is not possible and making their daughter feel continuously bad about it. And that's where I lost any sort of, like, sympathy.
Also, on the topic of that, you made the comparison about, like, Neo's situation and being bi or gay. Neo feels, and maybe this is just me, but very trans in this book.
Yes! I was thinking about that, to be honest.
You pick up on that later when they talk about, like, well, she changes her name and she always has, like, she has a kind of identity crisis. She doesn't really like what she was given at birth. She wants to change herself into something else. She doesn't like
It's like kind of like the Little Mermaid allegory, but like kind of like,
she doesn't, what really tipped me off is it's near the end of the book when she talks about how she prefers when people read her words instead of using like the
text-to-speech?
Because the text-to-speech doesn't sound like how she imagines her voice. And I'm like, that was... Yeah. That just felt... I mean, I don't know if that was intentional, or I could just be reading...
But we made a video about that, remember?
We did.
A couple months ago. About why we felt like Neo was kind of...
also Penny was kind of fruity. But like, reading this book, it's like, it's there.
Yeah, and that's something I definitely thought about, right? And so I feel like that's very interesting, especially for like, like I guess what we're talking about, right? Is that, the parents had like certain dreams and expectations, but they never adjusted and accepted her. Whereas Roman is the one that accepts her, but he meets her before she changes. Because I think that at first she still has her brown hair.
Yeah.
It's only when she goes back, I think the second or third time is when she has the pink, and he's like, oh, I like what you did with your hair, right? Whereas the parents are like, what the fuck are you doing, right?
Be gay, do crimes.
Exactly.
Is what the story is about.
Roman is just accepting of almost this like, how do you say, like allegorical transness. Yes, exactly. The allegorical transition, whereas the parents are like, what, like, you know what I mean? And so that's why it's like Roman, we have no choice but to stand fuck the parents, though. Like, fuck them, though, right? And so, and so then,
that's one thing I'll say about this book is that in the past, like, I liked Roman, but I never loved Roman. I think I'm starting to like him a lot more now.
Yeah, me too.
My opinion of him is higher. That he's just an absolute... I just love a dynamic where two people are absolute bastards, but they love each other.
Oh, exactly.
Like, it's like... this is a weird reference, but it's like Jesse and James from Pokemon.
Oh my god, yeah, I think so. And there's some gay stuff going on with them, too.
Yeah, just like habitual criminals that, like, hate the world and are a little dysfunctional, but do love each other.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that there is a doctor mentioned multiple times, and we never see this man. It's Dr. Mazarin, and people were speculating that this is like
a child psychologist
from well, yes, he is, or she, I'm not sure. And so they said, right? People were saying that like, oh, this doctor is like from this fairy tale or this story, and it's like, I don't know, like it was about like, oh, it's about like a girl that has a secret sister or something. Like people were saying like where the inspiration came from. Maybe we should just look this up real fast if we want to just double check, little fact checking. But we don't see the doctor, and I think that that's kind of strange. You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's kind of strange that we didn't see them, because I thought that, you know, like a therapy session chapter would have been like interesting, I guess, to see how like Neo acts with this doctor, you know what I mean? And so that's the only thing where I'm like, they introduced this character and mentioned them multiple times for them to like not be relevant.
I do
I
do find it interesting that like obviously like the parents really consider the value, like really value this child psychologist, but Neo clearly doesn't.
It's the casebook of Sherlock Holmes.
Oh.
Okay, so it's a Sherlock Holmes character, I guess. Anyway, I don't know where people found it, because looking up, like, Dr. Marzarin book is not giving me a lot. But if you guys remember, like, what he's supposed to be, let me look up RWBY. Maybe somebody has it on the wiki already. I don't know. No, it's probably because of, oh, wait, I found it. I found something. Okay. So Cardinal Jules Mazarin was the first minister to Kings Louis, the numeral of France. I don't know what the Roman numerals are. He succeeded the infamous, Cardinal of the Free Musketeers, and in the sequel, the Free Musketeers, 10 years later, there's a certain story about Louis, the Roman numeral, a secret identical twin brother of Louis.
Oh, that's the man in the iron mask.
Yes, the man in the iron mask to conceal his identity. I love how you got where I was going. Yeah. Yes. So this was a Tumblr post about it, because this person said, I don't think trivia is Neapolitan because of this, right? So that was like the ongoing theory before the book came out, is that it was actually like a real identical twin or something. That did not happen. But see, that's the thing, is that they brought up this doctor and then they don't come back. Because I guess you could argue that Neo is the character that's forced to wear the iron mask in a lot of ways, right, to conceal. So it's like a double thing, you know, the duality situation. But anyway, and so then we have a friend who does something bad and then takes the blame and then makes you take the blame isn't a very good friend. And so the mom said that. And so I feel like that basically...
That at the time felt more like I guess foreshadowing that Neo would start doing bad things. And I guess Neo did, but also it almost just kind of sounds like an out-of-touch mom being like, don't hang out with those friends.
Well, I think that, like, the reason why this is important is for, like, later on, Roman thinks Neo betrayed him, and then Neo thinks that Roman wouldn't bother to save her if the situations were reversed, right? And so I think that that's kind of the idea. You know what I mean? It was supposed to be foreshadowing for, like, those events, I guess you could say. Yes. And so, yeah, so she wipes her hand on the vase. So basically what happens is her and Neo knock over a vase. She says Neo did it. I guess that her illusions have mass sometimes or something. I don't know. Anyway, she probably knocked it over and thought it was Neo. Who knows, right? So she knocks it over. The parents make her clean it up. And so she gets blood on her hand and just wipes it on the chair. And that felt both very much an indication of I don't like care about the consequences that my actions have.
It's almost like she didn't do it vindictively. Yeah. She was just like a kid, and she's just like, oh, my hand's dirty.
Exactly, and at the same time, it's like, you know, kids that wipe their hands on their pants instead of using the napkin. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like this kid clearly like just does not internalize the lessons and things that her parents are telling her. Exactly. And so then we have someone else would pick up the broken pieces later. And so that's about the vase. So she just basically sweeps it under a chair or basically under the rug and says somebody else will deal with that.
Maybe this could also be a whole metaphor about like, what's that called? It's when like rich kids act out.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
It's affluenza.
Yeah, or something like that.
Like
I don't think that Neo has affluenza.
I don't think she does, but every once in a while she's like, someone else will deal with it. Like she has a little bit.
Yeah, I
mean, part of me likes Neo just for being a total amoral psychopath with style.
Yes.
And part of me also feels like, oh, this is actually a bad person, and I wonder to what extent do they like Neo's great, or are they like actually Neo is like her inability to see the consequences of her actions. I think though are unattached to her ability to ever have consequences in her home life.
I think that the someone else would pick up the broken pieces is actually a reference to her later. You know what I mean?
And like her relationship with
herself, I think. Okay. You know what I mean? Like that's just how I would interpret it, because at this point she's ignoring and like suppressing all of these things. And then so I think that she is picking up her own broken pieces, to be honest. Like I think that that's kind of the idea, not necessarily that Roman's the one who does it. I think that she is basically like, I'll just sweep this under the rug. And like, you know, so I think that it's more about like Neo and her relationship with herself in a lot of ways. And so, do we have anything else to say about chapter 1? Because I did write, like, the mom is caring, but then cold when Neo doesn't speak. She coddles her, and so this is when I lost sympathy for the mom, too. With the dad, sometimes I was like, I understand his pain, but fuck you. But the mom, I was like, oh, I feel a bit more sympathetic towards her, but as soon as Neo doesn't speak, she's like, oh, fuck you then, basically. Like, she coddles Neo,
she was
she's like,
exasperated.
why don't you just say something for mommy? Like, that's how she kind of acts, and then she's just like, okay, well, fine, clean up the vase. She's like, switches like that, right?
Yeah.
So
I do feel like Caramel more than Jimmy will try to like help Neo on Neo's terms more time.
Yes.
Because like she does light the house on fire.
Yes.
So if anything, sending it to a same old all-girls school that she went to might be her version of like tough love.
Maybe.
But, like this could work out. Like just I think I'm a little more
I
sympathetic
actually think that
Caramel.
the mom's motivation was. I actually think that that's recontextualized though, Hunter, because the mom graduated from there. She knew it wasn't a real school. Like it was, but she knew that it wasn't. The mom knew that it was like a spy school,
Did
right?
she know it was a spy school?
I think so.
Because Lisa
She
Lavender
worked there.
didn't, because she...
But Lisa didn't go there.
Lisa went there.
Did she?
Yeah, she did.
Maybe she didn't get high enough. But I think the mom did. I think that was the implication, because she was going to use the dad at the end of the book. Do you remember how she was like, oh yeah, I'm going to use Jimmy to do da-da-da-da-da. As soon as we have this, this, and that, like, I'm going to, like,
Maybe.
he'll get into power.
I don't know.
He'll get the emergency dust. Remember she said that? She was like, he'll get the emergency dust control, but we'll all know who's leading behind the scenes. It's me. Right? So she was a little manipulative herself. So
who knows? Maybe that's where Neo gets it from.
I
her
actually
criminal
think
inclinations
that
and manipulative
it wasn't
abilities.
the mom sending her away in the sense that her mom realized my daughter has genuine talent.
Yeah.
I'm going to send her to the same spy school that I was sent to, right? And then she was able to hide it from the dad because the dad would see it as we're sending our daughter to boarding school so she can toughen up. But the mom, I think, always realized that Neo had something special about her, but she just decided this is the only way to convince the dad to let Neo develop and grow her semblance, and that will be an asset to me later. So I actually think that the mom was aware that the school was what it was and almost sent Neo there to hone her little psychopath skills, but it ended up like backfiring against her when I think that she thought she could use Neo to her benefit maybe later on. I don't know. But that being said, let us go onwards to chapter 2. Oh my god, how long is this video going to be? I mean, we are talking about things and like some of those things, not out of order. Yeah, basically out of order, right? And so yes, let us talk about 2 now. Okay, so this is the first Roman chapter. So he's in Mistral. He's in somewhere called Sakura Park, which I thought, again, like, nice to know locations and things
true.
like that.
Yeah.
And so the Luck of the Mountains is a bar with illegal gambling in the basement, and so that is Miss Malachite's, I guess, just one of the places that she, I don't want to...
Speakeasy.
Exactly. That she owns or takes money from the real owner, whatever. And so then we have a character called Honeywine, and this is actually kind of important for later, right? So she is a singer whose semblance makes people feel intoxicated. If this ever gets animated, that singer better fucking be Casey, okay?
Oh,
that would be so cool. What
really
did you think I was gonna say? Like, oh, Rooster Teeth.
I thought you were gonna say.
I was gonna like put out
honestly,
myself?
no, I thought you were gonna say better be really hot.
Oh, okay. Well,
Both.
yes.
We can have both.
But I think
Both
it
is
should
good.
also, I think Casey, that would be such a funny,
yeah, that would
like,
be funny.
a cool thing. Anyway.
Or if not her, someone else in the rooming community.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because, okay, well, she's a singer at, like, kind of a bar, right? So you kind of think of that cabaret, more Broadway style than maybe Casey does, so, like... But I don't have that sort of sultry voice. You know who should do it? It should be Anna Pantsu. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but she does a bunch of, like, musical theater covers. Well, sometimes she'll like sing as the guy. She did Other Side from The Greatest Showman, like with another girl lately. Like she just has that like sultry. She did Friends on the Other Side from Princess and the Frog. She has that like Anyway, that's my suggestion if this ever gets animated. Thank you. Okay. So, Roman says he is filled with a longing for something he couldn't put his finger on. Put a name to, and conviction he'd find it in the club. So he's basically saying that is the power of the semblance. That sort of like manipulative, like, I have a longing for something that I can't like figure out, and I'll find the answer in the club. The answer is giving my money to Miss Malachite, right? It's a manipulative thing, but I also think that it's like a double meaning kind of thing, because think about it, he did find it through the club in a way,
I guess so.
right? In a very roundabout way. So I do wonder if the semblance is not manipulating people as much as it is, I don't know, like kind of like magical in a way where it just so happened that for Roman, like, I don't know, you know, the butterfly effect type situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what I sort of wonder about the power of like honey wine and stuff, because you could just go for like, oh, it just makes people think that they'll find the answer inside of the club, but like, what if the answer is inside of the club? Because it's a bit more complicated than that. What if it just allows people to feel what they already desire, you know, kind of like a little fate.
Maybe it's
situation,
like maybe because
you know?
like honey wine is mead, so like maybe it's like an alcohol like illusion.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's like, oh, like it'll make you uninhibited.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. So what if it's not manipulation, but it's inhibition?
Yeah.
And that longing that Roman feels is actually the longing that he has always felt inside of his heart, but never allowed himself to feel, right? And so I wonder if that could be it, because like, I'm trying to think about this in a way, like, why do people gamble, right? Like, I feel like people gamble, like, for, like, not people with a gambling addiction, but just, like, kind of, like, surface level, right? Like, they want to feel that, like, dopamine, they
rush.
want to feel the rush, they want to feel the power of, like, something going right for them, right? Of, like, being lucky, they want to, like, feel that sort of control in a way, like, it could also be a control thing, and so I'm just wondering, like, what if you couldn't, because if I was walking down the street, could honey wine manipulate me to go into the bar, basically, right?
Probably.
Or does she only manipulate people that already have that inclination to go into the bar in the first place because of something deep inside of them that may be solved by something like gambling?
I'm sorry, like a smoky voiced pretty singer.
I know, I don't mean in terms of that. I just mean in terms of like, what if like the whole thing is that Roman felt the desire to go in there because somehow, like, through magic and semblance and bullshit, right? Because, I mean, Crow has good luck, bad luck, right? So this is, fate is not that much different than luck, right? It was fate that, like, brought Roman into Miss Malachite's orbit so he would eventually meet Neo, and that is what ended up filling the I don't know, I'm just saying, I think that that's kind of interesting, right? And so he feels it because of the singing, like, it lures people in, that's what he thinks, though. But we know that semblances are sometimes more complicated, where they seem as though they do something on the surface, but then really it's like something else. You know, like a lot of people think Crow semblance is actually luck based off of like manifestation. Like he thinks negatively, so bad things happen. Whereas if he thought positively, good luck would happen to Crow, right? Some people think it's like the manifestation of the outcome versus strict bad luck, right? And so, you know, what if it's like kind of like that for like the honey wine thing? It's not manipulating people, it's lowering people's inhibitions so they are feeling things that they don't want to admit they feel.
So anyways, now that we're just done discussing a character with only two
Well, no, she comes back later. Okay, anyway, so Roman's 18, he steals a man's coat. By the way, like that's like the whole point of this is to basically get his concept art outfit, which we talked about when the preview chapters came out. What I thought was funny is that he says that he is disoriented, so the man that he steals from is disoriented, wealthy, stupid, and oblivious, right? And so that's like the perfect, you know, target for a crime is all of those things. And then apparently there's an elevator in the city, which I don't remember if we knew, so that's like...
Well, because it's very elevated, or like very...
levels.
Longitudinal?
Yes, I guess. And so I don't remember if we knew that when we went to Mistral, like in terms of like world building stuff, but they mention it here. So that's nice world building. But in addition to the elevator, there's also stairs. And it's like the elevator doesn't come all the way down here. You know what I mean? Because you could kind of argue that's like the elevator was put in by the Mistral government and they don't want you to come this low. It's kind of like a class representation. Like Roman even commentates on it that it's sort of like a thinly veiled, or like they said the quiet part out loud type of thing, you know what I mean? Like it's basically like a classism kind of thing, and Roman comments on that. He's like, yeah, they're kind of blatant about the fact that like you lowly people shouldn't use the elevator to come up here, take the stairs, but that also helps in terms of committing crime, right? So that's the other thing. So the elevator doesn't come down to this level. This is called Mistral Below, and so Roman says it's a buffer between the haves and the have-nots. This guy was one of those snobs who spent his nights and money on the lower levels, but had no respect for the people that lived there. And I thought that was kind of like an interesting, especially when you think of it, I don't know why I thought of this, but that's a very interesting, like, sex work almost metaphor and stuff like that, right? Like when you think about it,
they use them but don't respect them.
Exactly, right? And so I thought that that was kind of, I don't know, because it is like the seedy underground area, so I wonder if that was a little, little, it's almost like, oh, like guys want to watch porn and they want to watch nudes, but then they call people sluts that like make that content, right? Or whatever. They held their noses so high that they didn't notice what was right under them. I really liked that. I thought that that was I like that little clever line from Roman, you know what I mean? And so I thought that that was nice. And so he wallops the man, that's what I wrote down. So he hits the man with the cane and basically like beats him until he gives him the coat, the gloves. Yeah. And he has a ponytail, I think up until even when he meets Neo. So he's in his concept art sort of outfit. In Mistral, everyone minds their own business. If someone did here, they'd run the other way and be grateful it wasn't happening to them. I thought that that was great. I thought that that was very funny. Anyway, so this, I do feel bad for saying in the first video that Roman was like an incel or something. You remember that?
You did say
I do feel bad because like this is actually not as big of a part of his backstory as we thought. He just says like again that he helped a woman he thought was being attacked, but then he got pinned on for it and like arrested because that woman was a criminal doing criminal things with the other guy, and so to avoid getting them both caught, basically she was just like, oh, Roman did it, so the police wouldn't investigate her and this other guy. And so then we get introduced to Brick and Mortar, and they introduce a third one later on to this trio, right? We don't actually see him. Roman just like says it, I think. I don't remember who it is, though. I probably wrote it down. And so, yes. And so they are basically Miss Malachite's goons, and they have, like, a whole little, like, fight situation right here because Roman is stealing from the people that go to the club. And so their fear is the guys won't go to the club anymore if they keep getting robbed on their way out, right? They won't have money to spend at the club if you rob them before they go in, all of that sort of stuff. And so I really liked Roman's dialogue here because it's just, like, witty and perfect. He's like, oh, it feels nice to feel wanted. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
he says something like that.
That's one thing I will say is that they get Neo's cheekiness. What really threw me off
Roman
is that, and Roman's like sarcasm and cheekiness. What really threw me off is that like Neo in her real life is a lot like her RWBY chibi counterpart.
Yeah.
She even calls Roman a dum-dum once.
Yeah, but I think that was intentional.
I know that was an intentional reference, but she feels a lot like. Because, like, everyone's just a goofier version, but she's just kind of
But Neo's
goofy.
just the same, yeah. And so, basically, then there's you have a unique grasp of socioeconomics. That was my favorite line from last time when we read the preview chapters. So, yeah, Roman's just been stealing from them. They have a little bit of a fight. He steals Brick's money when he, like, beats them up and everything. And so then he goes to the Happenstance Hotel, which, again, I thought was kind of funny. But the spiders find him in a couple days. And so they basically have a conversation. Like, she sees the potential in him. He's just like, I'm not a boy, I'm a man. And she's just like, no, you're not.
Yet.
Right? Not yet. No, you're not. Right? And so she apparently overthrew the old boss and took over. And I think what's interesting, and we'll make a separate video about this, I think that there's like a divorce thing going on. Because, okay, so we have this character called Hai Zhao, I think. Yeah. Right? I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but when I first said that, Arnold was like, oh, that's Junior, right? Because that's Junior's actual name, I think. But then we found out that that's not Junior, that's his dad, and that's why Junior is called Junior. Like in the context of the book, that is Junior's name, but Junior's dad is Hai Zhao, and that's why Junior is a Junior, right? And so you have to, like, the way that I'm thinking about this is that, like, Hai Zhao has a name from Mistral, right? Like, a name that you would usually associate with, like, being from Mistral. And so I wonder if what happened, like, here's my whole thing, okay? This is my whole thing. I think that Hai Zhao and Miss Malachite were married, and so they got a divorce, and that's why he's in Vale. You never know where the
Malachites come from, and you don't know where Junior comes from.
Yes, and so I feel like that what happened is that, because something that he says, it's very interesting. Hai Zhao has a line later where he says, I wish I had a daughter like you instead of my idiot son. And you could say that that's kind of like a throwaway thing, but what if he does? So what if what happened is that they both were married, had Junior, they had a falling out, so he left for Vale, still alive, took Junior, because he says later, I know that the Malachites don't leave anyone alive, so you're fucking lying, Roman, right? He says that to Roman, right?
I think Junior's older than...
The Malachites.
And Junior and the Malachites hang out.
That's what I was saying. saying, so that's the theory that we need to make later, is like, but why are they hanging out if they're supposed to be enemies? Is it because after the dad died, they found out that they were siblings? And after Malachite took over kind of the Vale area, which is her goal, like, in terms of, like, the book, right? Like, what if they found out that they were, like, siblings kept apart, and that's why they hang out at the bar later on, right? So that's kind of what I was thinking,
I didn't put,
right?
There's also,
because they also talk about, like,
line where they don't know where the Malachite's
She told me that she would stay, like, you know, later on, they say something like, oh, well, you know, like, Malachite said, like, she would stay in Mistral and I would stay in Vale, right? That we would both get, it's very much like, who gets the house, right? That's how it feels, right? And so I feel like that there's kind of a divorce subtext here, right? Where they got divorced. And that's what happened. And so then he doesn't even know he has 2 daughters. And so what if, and he has the secretary, Stella, okay? It seems like that maybe he had an affair, ran off with the secretary, Miss Malachite was pregnant, and then had the twins on her own. Mic drop. Okay, thank you.
I could see that.
Thank you, thank you.
And they also talk about how they don't know who the father, like Roman has a throwaway line where he doesn't know who the father was, and he's like, he must have been a crazy motherfucker.
Exactly.
And like, he
like
was.
He's good to get out of here, you know what I mean? And he did, right? And so, I'm just saying, we'll make a theory about that at a later date.
I like that a lot, actually.
Something that we did not see in the preview chapter was the fact that Roman threw Brick and Mortar under the bus. He was like, okay, well, I may not be ready, but I'm better than these 2 fucks, okay? Like, you should be disappointed in them because they, like, couldn't capture me. If you think that I'm not ready, like, your own men suck ass. I could beat them in a fight right now. And so, yeah, Roman has a very cocky attitude, which I think is pretty funny. And so she's just like, oh, you think you could do better than Brick and Mortar? And Roman's like, I can't possibly do worse. It was so... I love that. We love to see it. So he's basically hired and then they put him through initiation. They get Brick and Mortar to beat him up. But he says something interesting like, you know, I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was basically like, you know, I'm getting beat up today, but I'll learn from it so I don't die tomorrow. Like, he had a couple lines like that.
Learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
And
like,
your
you know,
gangland beatings.
He had a couple of lines like that where he basically had been saying, like, you know, what doesn't kill me, like, just means, like, he said something so interesting, and I think it's probably in my notes, but he's just like, I didn't die to live another day. Like, it was something, it was a twist on that sort of, like, mindset of the what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's like, if it does, like, I got through it, so I'll get killed later. You know what I mean? Like, he always had something death at the back of his mind, right? And so, yeah, that's basically all of chapter 2, I think, which I know this video is gonna be something, guys. But the notes get shorter as we go on, I promise. Like, by the end of the book, they get to, like, 1 page, so don't come for me. And so, this is called Painting the Town Pink, which I think is a Volume 2 reference, right?
Yes,
because one of the episodes
the town
was
red
called that.
when they go out and they try to find
yes.
Where they I think that's the scene where with Sun and Neptune fighting on the cars and Roman's in the big mech suit.
And so now Trivia's 12, and so I wrote this, the dad sounds like he's in a gang or something, because Trivia's never allowed to go out alone, right? And so I think that was kind of an added layer to all this, is that, like, the dad kind of knew that Neo would be used as leverage against him, and so she always had to be accompanied everywhere. So it wasn't just because, like, you know, she was mute, it was more because, like, you know, he's basically in the mafia, right? So it was that as well, right? That. And so she's in the commercial district with Neo. She loves it. And, like, something that we find out is that Neo loves food. Like, Neo could eat. She likes cotton candy and chocolate and corn dogs and cake and whatever else.
Which
and
is
ice
a weird
cream,
thing,
right?
because that was also a thing that was really prevalent in fan fiction about her.
Oh, yeah. And so I
like
love that.
A foodie.
And so her parents are having this big party, and she wasn't invited because it seems like they're embarrassed of her or, like, keeping her basically in the shadow. And she actually, like, says something about that. So I wrote that before I knew, like, you know, I wrote that as I was reading, and then I put yup, because she goes on to say, because she can't speak, her mismatched eye, and everything, they make her wear a brown contact lens to look normal.
Which is so sad.
Which is so fucked
that
up.
was when I was like, okay,
portrait.
I don't like these. You know,
the parents are like, very fucked up. And I think that was interesting in terms of, like, the portrait that we saw on the front of the book, because a lot of people said, well, wait, that's not Neo's eye, so they're different people, right? Like, a lot of us thought that before, because of the whole, like, you know, Louis the 14th or whatever numeral that is, like, the brother, the secret brother and everything. Like, you know, a lot of us sort of thought, like, oh, wait, but that Neo has 2 brown eyes. how, right? And so it was the contacts, right? The parents even tricked us, which I think is, kind of funny for like symbolism at the beginning of the book, right? Her bedroom has grown to be too confining. And so, yeah, they talk about her clothes a lot. And so I will note she wears a white tank top, brown blazer, white shoes with pink hearts. And I think that's her Valentine's Day costume in Amity Arena, or at least maybe inspired by it. And so I found that kind of interesting. So she gets a chocolate vanilla milkshake, which obviously, there's no strawberry in there, but that's kind of like, at this point, she is only chocolate and vanilla, right? She's only vanilla, and then she's only... Yeah. Like her, brown like hair. Herself, if that makes sense, brown hair, right? And yeah, so she loves food, and so there's two girls with identical hair and clothes, and so at first I thought this was the Malachite twins, but then they introduced these random fucking characters that are irrelevant, right? I'm not that mad about it, but like, why? Like, that's what I don't understand. It would be more, right?
Were they, because what I ended up thinking later was that what if they were people in Mrs. Beat's school?
Maybe, but
and they were some of the ones that were mean to her.
We didn't connect.
But they didn't make that connection.
They didn't make that connection. So they're Heather, Mags, and Cookie. And so I'm not sure what Mags is supposed to be like I'm sure that they're all sweet related, in some way.
I just like that I like whenever a thing names a bully character Heathers.
Yeah, so that's like a Heathers reference too, like in a way, right? And so that was kind of weird. That's something that I disliked, was the fact that they brought in these random girls to bully Neo for no reason, you know what I mean? And they weren't even at the school later, at least not that I can like recollect, And so I think it would have been more effective to have the Malachite twins here in a capacity so they could bully her here and then bully her when she got at school later. You know what I mean? Instead of introducing, because I guess you could argue though, it's to show that Neo has gotten bullied her entire life by a multitude of a variety of people, right? But I think that it's just kind of random. Also, what girls, because, okay, I get it. Like, people do get bullied in school and stuff, right? Like, I think we've experienced that or we've seen it, but when you're just walking down the street, like, I have never seen a group of high school girls, just go for a stranger, you know what I mean? Like, down the street, right? Because, bullying mostly, I think, happens in the context of school or clubs, right? Like, Neo's not at school. She's just a random girl sitting on a bench in a park, in a public place. It's like if I was sitting downtown Toronto, right? And I was just minding my fucking business, and then 3 high school girls just started bullying me out of nowhere. Like, does that happen? I don't know. Maybe I'm just
No, I can think of one instance where that happened.
Because I think that's just so, I don't want to say contrived, but
it's so 80s high school drama.
You know what I mean? Like, bullying in school happens. Bullying in clubs happen. Bullying random people on the street, I haven't seen it, so I don't know, right? But I'm just saying, I thought that was kind of weird, right? And so then they have friends don't let friends dress like that. So I think that what happens is they basically suss out that Neo has money and they want to use her to go shopping, because they basically say, why don't you come shopping with us and you pay for it? So I don't know how they suss that out, but it seems like they're taking advantage of her money. And so then Cookie trips Trivia and the ground cracked for some reason. So I don't know what that was all supposed to be about. Like, I don't know if it was an illusion of the ground cracking or
that was Neo's illusion.
Power. Yeah, I guess that was the illusion that it was cracked. But also, remember in Volume 1 when Ren did that thing with his aura? Yeah. I guess it could have technically been that too, but who knows, right?
But then again, people tend to people never did that again with their aura.
Yeah, I know, right?
There's a lot of things people never did again after Volume 1 of RWBY.
So what's interesting is they can see Neo. So she's been making an illusion of Neo. You know what I mean? Like, we thought that it was just her imaginary friend, but she's actually manifested it, with an illusion. Like, the parents could see it if they arrived in time, basically. Because the girls in this scene see Neo, and Neo punches Cookie in the face. Which is kind of interesting, because I'm like, how though? Because obviously the illusions don't have mass. Do they? I mean, I guess maybe they do.
They do. Because I know she creates a physical wall.
I know that they yeah, I know that, but I'm saying in terms of movement. Because it's supposed to be anyway. And so maybe Neo or I guess maybe Trivia just put Neo's skin over her, because that's something she does later, and then punched her in the face. We're kind of dealing with an unreliable narrator in a lot of ways here, right? And so it's kind of instructions unclear.
She doesn't entirely understand what's going on either.
Exactly.
Therefore,
so
he won't.
Either the illusion did it, or Neo put that skin over herself and then she punched her, right? It's kind of unclear. But then the cops come and they bring her home, right? And so they're saying like, oh, I didn't even know that Jimmy had a daughter. And I'm just like, oh, fuck this man, right? Trivia causes a bunch of illusions to disturb the party, right? So she basically, like, she gets home.
Makes like rats, lights people on fire.
Yeah,
basically.
Great time. She does a bunch of like, it's like that scene, I don't know what movie it is, but like, there's like, I think a very similar scene in like a Marvel or DC movie where the villain goes into the party or whatever and they kind of like, you know, fuck shit up. Anyway, I don't know what it is. I don't even know if Hunter knows what I'm talking about, so that's okay. But yes, Trivia regrets acting out. She doesn't know what are her feelings or Neo's. She wants to do more or worse though. So that's, you know, something that's interesting is that she doesn't know like, oh, am I just being influenced by Neo or is this how I feel? And I think that the end result is it's kind of both. Like, I think that we have, like, and they actually talk about this later in the book, like the super ego, the ego, and the id situation. They talk about, and again, who discovered that? Because it wasn't fucking Freud.
Yeah, does Freud exist?
Freud doesn't exist in Remnant.
In the world of RWBY, is there penis envy?
Yeah, and so that's, you know what I mean? Like, that was another thing that I just thought was funny.
I mean, there's psychiatry, so I guess Freud has to exist for psychiatry.
I get it. Like,
is this called like is his name called like instead of Sigmund Freud it's like Figman Stoid?
Yeah, fig is a color.
Figman,
okay,
Figman.
You know, and so anyway, so here's the thing. It's not a big deal, but couldn't they make that fairy tale inspired somehow? Like, couldn't have they done like, you know, they say that there's like this feeling in all of us. It's the sun, the moon, and the broken moon,
and the water,
right? Or something.
I don't know.
And you know what I mean? Like, couldn't they have done? Because, okay, well, you know, Remnant has this story where there was the moon, and the moon broke and made the sun, and then they made also, like, a new moon or something, right? There was multiple moons at one point, and then they, you know, they basically did a bunch of stuff. So couldn't you have, like, the broken moon, the whole moon, and the sun, and have that represent the super ego, the ego, and the id or something? Like, I get that it's more like understandable for the audience, but it's hilarious to think that Sigmund Freud is the one who said that, right?
Yep.
So he exists? Who discovered this? That's all I'm trying to say,
That also kind of employs that, like, Sigmund Freud did a lot of cocaine. That implies that cocaine exists in the world of Remnant.
So that's all I'm saying, right? And so I feel like
it suddenly makes, like, I don't know, Nora make a lot more sense.
Like, it's a nitpick, but, like, I wish that they somehow, because there are fairy tales that you could have used for that. I don't know which ones at the moment, but I'm sure there was something, you know what I mean? To, like, represent the changes in someone's personality. But I kind
of like that. It's kind of like how in Cars 2 you see the Pope.
Oh
and
my
so
God,
like,
I hate that, but I love that, but I hate that. Anyway, so I think that that's basically what's happening here, because a lot of people thought that, like, Neo was gonna have DID and it was gonna be, like, handled poorly. I don't think that this is DID at all, and I don't think they were trying to make it DID ever. Like, I think that really what it is that it's her, you know, her worst impulses, and then her, like, best judgment, I guess. Like, the rational side of her is like, no, I can't do this, but then the impulsive side of her is, but I want to, right? Like, I want to fuck things up, I guess, right? And so, yeah, that's basically the end of this chapter, is sort of like Neo discovering she wants to do the bads.
Getting a taste for trouble.
Exactly. All right, chapter 4. We have the Malachite twins in this chapter. They are being babysat, if that is the correct term by Roman.
And this is the first time I took a note to compare the rigor of our notes.
Right? Exactly. So Hunter decided after
they talk
6
about
pages.
So Melitia, how do you pronounce her name? How do you pronounce it?
Melita?
Melita, there we go.
I don't know.
Her full name is Melitides.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
Good
Melitides.
job. Okay, nice.
Melanie and Melitides.
Melanie.
I'm sorry.
Melanie.
For some reason, I always fuck their name up, and I don't know why.
And so that's kind of interesting. And so it's been 4 years. So Roman is now 22 as of this chapter. Right? Math makes sense. Okay, so Roman gets to live in the safe house with the twins. He thinks he's basically a glorified babysitter. Like, that's his attitude, right? Little Miss has a lot of goons, and he doesn't trust them or like working with them. He doesn't like working with a partner, right? And so that's like kind of brought up, and obviously that's like foreshadowing to Roman being like, humph, I will never work with anyone. And then obviously like Neo comes along. It's great, right? So Roman has bought a metal cane. So again, metal Where does it come from? Tell us. Tell me, Rooster Teeth.
It's
where does
fine.
the metal come from? No,
It's
I'm just curious.
fine.
Okay, I just want to know.
You want to know where, like, the iron ore is?
Exactly.
Like, what old gross forests were stripping to,
Exactly. I'm just curious,
mine
okay?
the-
Because you know what would have been interesting? Like, it would have been interesting to make Remnant, like, ecologically friendly. Like, what if all the weapons were made out of, like, wood, but the wood was, like, I don't know, it was
Magical
super
word.
wood or
Super
something.
wood.
Like, you know what I mean? Kind of like how we have, like, solar panels. Like, what if it was, like they had weapons, but they were, like, ecologically friendly or something instead of being, like, metal? Because, like, metal you have to, like, find in the ground and shit, right? Like, you know what I mean? And so, like, you know, what is big mining destroying, like, the conservation forests of, like, Vale or something? Like, you know, and so that's all
the old growth Vale forest.
Exactly. So I'm just wondering. So instead of robbing banks, the girls encourage him to steal dust. Right? And so Roman wants to do a heist, and they're basically saying, you know, like, why don't you just steal dust? And Roman's like, LOL, no. Right? And that happens again until, I guess, Volume 1, where Roman is actually deciding to steal the dust. You know what I mean? And so now, actually, that's kind of interesting because a lot of people, I don't want to say criticized Roman, but they were sort of wondering why was Roman going around stealing all this dust if, like, Salem never needed it. Like, now we know it wasn't really because of Cinder. It was something that he always wanted to do before.
Yeah.
And Cinder, I guess, just took advantage of the fact that he was doing it to, like, help with, like, the beacon things. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't for Salem at all. Roman was stealing the dust. Cinder just took notice of a big criminal being in Remnant and, like, wanted to, or I guess in Vale, and, like, collabed with him, not for the dust, but more so for his numbers and how he was working with the white family. Like, they were working in criminal collaboration.
Didn't they also
right?
put the dust in the train and then ride the train into Mountain Glen? So I feel like they kind of, it's kind of fun that, like, this was his dream forever, and they, like, here, like, do it for us.
But you know what I mean? Like, Salem did not want the dust, because a lot of people thought, well, what did Salem do with all that dust? Like, it had nothing to do with her. It seemed to do more with Roman. Well, like, you know what I mean, though? Like, people wonder where all that dust went.
I guess
but, like, I don't think Salem cares where it went. You know what I mean? Like, Salem doesn't care where all the dust that Roman took went. Unless she does, and she's just big chillin' with the dust. I'm just saying that it was always something that Roman wanted to do and was probably doing before Cinder ever approached him. But Cinder just caught him when he was basically doing all of that stuff. And then happened to, like, take advantage of it and all work together. Or whatever, right? And so, yes. I love how I wrote down, Chameleon can change the color of her skin. Could that be Ilya's mom?
Yeah, I thought
it was almost Ilya.
I was like,
minute.
is this connected? But then no, Ilya was in Atlas. Is she like? But she doesn't also say she's a faunus. She says it's her semblance. But I wonder if that's her lying to people.
Yes.
Because I know people are more racist to faunus and minstrel.
It
so
could
I almost
be
wonder
both,
if that's
though,
her
because
doing
think
that.
about Tyrion. Like, Tyrion, it's kind of unclear whether the poison is part of his semblance or also just a function of his tail.
Yeah.
Right? Or, like, even with Ilya, is that her faunus trait or is that part of her like, you know what I mean? Like, instruction's unclear, right? But they call her Chameleon, so I'm kind of assuming she is a faunus and that may be known. Here's the thing, though. I think that this is actually so great because I had a big brain moment in my Discord server, which you guys should join, by the way, right?
Oh, yeah, I love your big brain moments, Cal.
Think about it, okay? Roman used to be partnered with a faunus, and they seem to have, like, a romantic, almost, relationship.
Yeah, I said,
right?
I think that Chameleon liked him.
Yeah.
I don't think Roman
So
did.
think about that, and then think about how Roman later uses the faunus for his own personal gain in the show. And so that was sort of, because some people thought, like, oh, you know, this character just seems like copy-paste Ilya. Like, that's kind of like, you know, that's kind of weird. But I actually think that that was the point, to make her like Ilya, so you would basically, like, have that, like, in the back of your head during the scene, because we have unrequited love, in a way, with Ilya, right? Like, Ilya, like, and Blake were partners once, and then Blake ran off with Adam, and, like, all of that sort of thing, right? And so then you have Chameleon, and, like, Roman, and then Roman runs off, and he finds a new partner later. Like, it's
Chameleon faunus just to always get the curve.
like, parallels, right? But then also, I think that's interesting that Roman worked with and cared about a faunus honest, but yet goes on to treat people that way.
I don't think he cared about her that much.
Well,
I think
there was like a hint.
I think that
maybe he did
realized that she liked him more than he liked her.
I know, but like there was some hints even on Roman's side that maybe he cared about her a little.
Maybe.
But like that's the thing, right? Is that
Roman, you goddamn tsundere.
It's kind of interesting
admit when you like people.
That Roman had something going on, but then later he uses the faunus because it's like he has no sympathy for that, I guess. Like, it reminds us that even though Roman is a very charismatic person, ultimately he is an asshole and he just uses people for his own, you know, exactly, right? And so for his own personal gain and everything. So I think that that's the reason why they introduced this character. And they purposely wanted to make it like Ilya, so you would think about that and think about like the differences, I guess, between a character like Blake or like even a character like Adam, right? And then the situation like with Roman and, you know, et cetera, right? So I actually found that very compelling because a lot of people were like, oh, well, they just basically copied and pasted Ilya in here. Like, that's not very interesting. But I think that the point was to copy and paste Ilya in there and to give another character that may have struggled through some of the same things Ilya did and then have her be tossed aside by Roman and then like have this whole thing where Roman goes on to basically take advantage of the White Fang, right? And, you know, kind of be like shitty, like Roman, you know, that's
right.
not the nuance of Roman, but that's like the layer of Roman is that he's kind of a racist asshole, right? In those sorts of scenes, right? In that time, right? And so there's definitely some stuff like with Roman going on with all of that. So he's a likable villain, but he's also still a villain that does the bads, right? Like, and so we have to remember that, you know?
Questionable morals.
Exactly. And so Roman and her got matched to follow a councilman, apparently, and like they botched the job. Like there's a little bit of that in there. And so then they talk about Jack Plum, and I think that was the councilman's name. And so that's, oh gosh, what's the story of like Jack put his pie in the plum and then he took it out and the plum was on his thumb? And everything. Do you guys have any idea what I'm talking about?
I have no idea.
It's a story and it rhymes, but I don't know what it is. It's kind of like the Jack jumps over the candlestick, but it's a plum instead. And he puts his pie in the palm. He puts his thumb in the pie. We're not cutting that. That's fine. He puts his thumb in the pie and like anyway, whatever. Oh yeah. So Roman's semblances are overrated, and Chameleon can't even control hers, right? So that's kind of like
that leans to her being a faunist, right? Because it was the same way with Ilya, that when she would be embarrassed or angry, her skin would change.
Yeah, and so apparently Chameleon is called Cammy, which I was like, Carmen? No. And so, that was the other confusing thing for a little bit.
It would be funny if, like, we saw, like, back in the day, Carmen started off in...
Yeah,
Mistral.
maybe.
That would be funny.
I think the semblance thing is interesting because remember, Roman never had a semblance, right? And so it's almost kind of that implication, like how Watts was like, I didn't bother because I was good enough without it. It's almost like that same attitude, but Roman's like, a semblance is a waste of time, especially when you can't control it and it's kind of random what the fuck you get. So what was interesting here is, oh, this is so bad. Okay, so I wrote, because they said the bird has landed, right? In response to something. I don't remember what it was anymore. I think it was just the councilman stuff, right? Or whatever. Like, I think, the bird, I think, was Parrot. So, okay, there's another crime situation going on here, and I have no idea what the fuck these people are supposed to be based off of, but you have Paul Parrot, and then you have somebody called Badger, and then you have, like, this heist man in Vale, not Vale, in Mistral. And so I don't know what they were supposed to be based off of. Obviously, Parrot kind of reminds you of like a Captain Hook type thingy, pirate thing, like maybe Blackbeard something, but it's just Badger, and then Badger is the parent, Badger is the Parrot gang bouncer, but Parrot is the leader. So... Anyway, Parrot is the leader of this gang, is basically what I'm trying to tell you. But I don't know what he's supposed to be. He's called Paul Parrot. Do you want to look that up, Hunter?
Maybe it's like... okay, I'll look up Paul Parrot.
So, when they said the bird has landed, they were talking about Paul Parrot. They're basically saying the boss has gotten back in town, and Roman wanted to use that opportunity to basically get rid of, like, the rival gang mafia boss, right? I wrote down...
When I look up Paul Parrot, apparently Logan Paul has a pet parrot.
Oh my god, that's
all I get.
Look up Fairy Tale or something. Like, look up, something like that. So, when they said the bird has landed, I wrote down Crow? ... Like, I really thought that Crow Broadwin was gonna be in this book. It wasn't. It was the Parrot gang guy, right? And so, basically...
It's called The Blue Bird. French literary tale, published in 1697.
Well, there you go. What is it about? Because the whole thing in this chapter is that the guy has a pet Grimm in the basement that he uses to scare people and ends up getting, like, attacked by it.
After a wealthy king loses his dear wife, he meets and falls in love with a woman who is also recently widowed, and they marry. The king has a daughter named Florine, and the queen also has a daughter named Turturwine. While Florine is beautiful and kind, is spoiled, selfish, and ugly, it is not too long before she and her mother become jealous of Florine's beauty. One day the king
seems
decides,
completely irrelevant.
Yeah, I don't know where
happened.
the hell the there's not been a parrot yet.
Okay, well,
I bet you she gets turned into a parrot. I don't know.
Anyway, doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter.
So he basically wants to, like, go and, like...
Who knows? Maybe E.C. Myers is a big Logan Paul fan.
Oh, dear. He basically, like, wants to go down and take advantage of Parrot being there, I guess, right? And so his plan is to take the Malachite girls there and use them to blackmail Parrot or basically trick Parrot into thinking that Roman is switching sides and then he's gonna try to get him, right?
Yeah, but it's not the greatest of plans.
Because Parrot wants to use the girls to blackmail Little Miss, right? So Parrot wants to use the girls, Roman is going to bring the girls and pretend that he switched sides, basically, so he can, I guess, kill Parrot or whatever. And so, yeah, the Badger guy is, like, kind of creepy. So he's like, oh, Roman, is that your new girlfriend? And Melanie's like, ew, right? And so what's interesting is that Roman protects her from Badger when she, like, stomps her foot on him, and he's like, she's just a kid, right? And so that's the other thing that kind of makes me, like, mad that this discourse even happened with the book, because, like, there's multiple times where Roman is protective of them, like, kind of like an older brother, and is like, she's just a kid, bro. I think
they purposefully did that to try and avoid the type of discourse that came for them anyways.
And so I think that sucks. Like, I just think that that's really shitty because Roman is, like, you know, actually considerate of the children in this, even though he's using them to, like, you know, try to take out the gang. You know, like, they agreed to go along with him to take out the gang member. So I don't know, right? And so, yeah, so he wants to work with Parrot. That's what he says. It's not true, obviously. And so the heist goes wrong because they found militia, or what are we calling her? Melita, right? And so, yeah, so they found her because I guess she was, like, lurking too close to the scene. And so they caught both of the girls, basically. They weren't supposed to. Roman was only supposed to go in with one, like, for the fake out, and then, you know, like, attack the people, I guess, or whatever, right? Anyway, but they found the other girl, and so they're like, you have no leverage anymore, Roman, because we have all of you. So there's a Grimm in the basement, and it's Capybara Grimm. So it's basically
I was so excited.
A giant fucking rat. Okay.
I love capybaras. I was so excited when that happened.
Keeping Grimm in captivity is dangerous and stupid. So Roman says that because we have heard that Grimm don't last in captivity for a very long time. So I wonder, like, how that even works. But anyway. And so what's interesting is Roman says he grew up in Windpath, a settlement, and so he's thought the Grimm before. And so it doesn't seem like, because a lot of people have this theory that Roman was in the Apathy farm. It does not seem like that is his backstory. I think that Windpath is probably where the orphanage was, because we have this whole thing with Roman. I guess this is getting ahead of ourselves, but you know, he basically says his mom took him to an orphanage, and we don't really know why his mom did that, but anyway, so his mom takes him to an orphanage, and so I'm assuming that the orphanage was at the settlement, or he's saying that he was at the settlement with his mom, but then his mom took him into the city at a city orphanage. We don't really know, like, what, you know what I mean? And so anyway, they help him fight. Roman tells Parrot he didn't earn his position, he just inherited it, right? Because I guess Parrot's dad died. Maybe that had something to do with the myth earlier, but, like, who the fuck knows? Anyway, you didn't even capture the Grimm yourself. So what's interesting is that Roman is riling him up on purpose in this scene. Yeah. He's riling him up because Grimm, you know, basically are drawn to negative emotions, right? And so Roman, by being confident and being an asshole, is taking joy in being an asshole and attacking, I guess, Parrot, his confidence, right? And so Roman riles up Parrot to try to make him feel, like, angry, basically. And so I was just like, does this mean that Roman was scared around RWBY? Because that's something that we have to think about now in the context of the show, right? Because I'm sure that they didn't think about all this when they were, you know what I mean, when they were writing Roman, let's be honest. But what's interesting is that Roman is smart enough to know that keeping control of your emotions basically is a way to get the Grimm off your back, right? That the Grimm will go to the strongest emotion, and Parrot, like, getting angry, the Grimm basically sniffs Roman and, like, goes somewhere else, right, at that point. It's almost like what Ren does, but, like, just mentally, you know, without any semblance. And so what's interesting is, does that mean that Roman was actually fearful or angry when he had that monologue to Ruby? Because you think he would be more mindful of that and try to rile her up to get the Grimm off of him, but was he genuinely too scared to, like, you know, to actually think to do that? That's kind of an interesting thing to think about, because obviously I don't think that, like, when Miles and Carrie were writing that scene, they knew that Roman was going to do this in the novel that released almost, like, you know, 8 years later or whatever. I'm like sure that they did it, but in terms of, like, us, or right, like, to connect these points as, like, the audience, and to think about how Roman actually canonly acted in the show, could it be possible that Roman was genuinely scared around Ruby, right? I think that that's an interesting thing to think about. And so he didn't keep his emotions in check like he did in this scene, because he was kind of, like, blinded in that moment, because he was like, the world doesn't care about Spirit. Like, he seemed genuinely mad, right? So
yeah, he was riled up.
So that's definitely something to think about, is that he controls his emotions, and that throws off the Grimm. And so I wrote that they died. They didn't die. They got arrested. I guess I just thought that they died. And so Roman's heist is technically successful, and Roman's basically
Don't you love a technical success?
Exactly. Roman's basically like, all according to Keikaku. Like, he basically goes to say that with Malachite. So Miss Malachite is mad, but Roman points out that killing the Grimm earned the Spiders goodwill in the city, right? Because basically what happens is, I think Miss Malachite knew he was gonna try something, so they all basically are outside the establishment as this is all going down. Like, all of the Spiders are basically like, yeah, Roman, hey, you know, yeah, we knew you were gonna do something like this. So they are basically present to kill the Grimm, right? And Parrot was arrested, right? So I guess he didn't die, but maybe Badger was implied to have died. That's what I wrote down anyway. Little Miss is just mad he went behind her back. And so then he thinks Miss Malachite is flirting, but then she threatens to claw his eyes out, and so that was also kind of interesting. And so at the very end, he says the last thing he wants to be responsible for is some kid, right? So that's in reference to the two Malachite girls, like he's glad that he's off Malachite duty, right? Like that's sort of the implication. And I think it's after this point where maybe the Malachites were sent to boarding school because, like, Miss Malachite could no longer depend on Roman to babysit them anymore. Like, that could kind of be the implication. And so, yeah, like, the timeline thing is still a little bit fucky, but that's how, like, I would headcanon that after this point they went to school, and that's why they're, like, a year senior to Neo, because maybe, like, that's the timeline of it all, right?
Yes.
Is that they got sent after this chapter. Anyway, and so I did enjoy this one. I think the Miss Malachite flirting was weird, though, because, like, how old is she? Because she's young here. Like, he says that she's young, right? But, like, I don't know, like, there's probably a 10-year age gap between them, too. Like, there's just the age gaps of it all. But, yeah, I really like this chapter. This is when I started feeling entertained, I guess, because there was a heist, there was Grimm, there was combat, because there was a fight scene, right?
That chapter was a lot better paced, I would say. And I do say that, like, although it didn't feel like... It felt more like vignettes early on than like a kind of cohesive story.
It does all make sense, though.
I did enjoy it, and it does make sense.
Like, Roman had to do this, so the Malachites get sent away.
Yes.
So they would be at boarding school to facilitate the second half of this book.
That does make a certain amount of sense.
And so now we will continue on to chapter 5. Right? Okay, so now we have Aurelian? Aurelian? This is the teacher. I don't know how you're supposed to say her name. So, she is teaching Neo privately. So she is Neo's private tutor at the moment, right? So she's saying how Vale attacked Mistreely settlers in the Great War. So now we know what the plural of, like, people from Mistral are called. Mistrali. I don't know if we knew that before. Yeah, I guess Mistrali is how you say it, right? Past her fail, her parents would always be disappointed in her. Don't I feel that? That was, you know what I mean? And so I thought that was actually very interesting, just because it's like, if nothing I do is ever good enough, why try? Yeah. Right? Like, I think that's very interesting for Neo. So she's being homeschooled, right? So, she used to think that it was because of her mismatched eye or her muteness, but now she thinks it's because of her powers, that basically her parents don't want her to go out or have, like, some sort of shame about her. I personally think that, again, this is, I don't want to say Neo's unreliable, but this is her perspective. I actually think it's because of the dad being involved in the gang. Like, they see it as, our daughter is mute, she's defenseless, she does have these powers, but, like, that could cause a scene, and then the cops could investigate and find our illegal dust in the basement. Like, our, you know, our meth lab in the basement type thing. So that's sort of how I see it, like, in terms of why they were hiding her in the first place. Like, I think that the muteness definitely comes into play when they talk to her and they punish her, right? Because they say, like, you know, like, oh, if there was a time to speak up for yourself, da-da-da-da-da. Like, they say that. They mock her in that. I feel like it's genuine in a way, but they're insensitive, right? Obviously, they know that she can't. And so, yeah. And what was I talking about? Right, and so I think that it's because the dad is basically like the equivalent of like a drug lord. You know, he's not trafficking drugs. It's just in corruption and stuff.
He's
but
a corrupt politician.
He thinks that the people that he owes money to will come for his daughter. Is basically what I'm thinking. So I don't even think it's because of her mismatched eye makes it easier to tell who she is, that she's a vanille, right? Her muteness makes her defenseless in the case where she gets kidnapped, and now she has these powers that draw attention to her. So I think that that's what it's about. It's that Neo is so unique, it will draw attention, and basically she will be kidnapped. But that's the parents' fault, right? You know? And so I think that that's a pretty interesting thing to note, is think about all the reasons why the parents want to keep her confined. Is it really because they're embarrassed of her, or is it because that she has so much uniqueness to her that she is easily noticed and pointed out in the case where she will be kidnapped by the gang?
And it ends up being the case because...
Yes, exactly. And so I think that's interesting, because I do think, again, they're insensitive to all of those aspects of her, but I also wonder if he wasn't involved with the gang, would they care? And I feel like they wouldn't about at least the eye color thing. I don't know. Right?
I don't know. They seem very overly interested in, like, putting up heirs.
Oh, yeah. I think that that's true, too. That's, like, rich people things, right? And so, yeah.
Not that we know.
So the girl is a combat school professor, and Neo basically drugs the teacher with the sleeping pills that Marzaran prescribed. So again, we never see this fucking doctor. They just exist to prescribe medication conveniently, which is, again, fine. But I would have liked to see the therapy session. I feel like that...
You were the only person.
The doctor was probably written in and they cut him. 10,000%. Like, I will bet money on, like, E.C. Myers having wrote a scene with the therapist and that getting cut for, like, pages, basically. You know what I'm saying? Just because of, like, the nature of, like, condensing books and drafts and things like that. I feel like that this character was actually present.
Release the Myers cut!
Possibly before this chapter. And then it was supposed to connect to the sleeping, like, she talked to the doctor to get the sleeping pills. Maybe. Now the doctor prescribed the anyway. And that's what I think is so funny, is that there's sleeping pills in Renman. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But, like, what plant cause it? Like, how do they make sleeping pills?
Like, what other pills exist?
Explain it to me like I'm 500. How do they make sleeping pills? Is it a plant?
I think melatonin is a plant extract.
Okay, so there's...
But, like, I think there's hardcore pharmaceutical ones that'll just, like Vicodin?
Like our fake melatonin?
Yeah.
Basically? I don't think Vicodin... Vicodin's a painkiller.
Okay, never mind. I'm thinking of... No, Xanax is also a...
Anyway.
Now I'm just thinking about pills people abuse.
Also, why does Neo need sleeping pills, by the way? Like, they never explain it. Like, you would think it's for anxiety, right? Like, that's when you get prescribed sleep. So there's just something missing in here about that Neo has anxiety or something, or
maybe it's for the mom?
Parents prescribe the sleeping pills to make sure she didn't get up at night. Like, are they like those parents that give their kids Tylenol when they don't want to deal with them? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that there may be some, like, seediness to this prescription. Because, like, I obviously, some kids do need medication at that young of an age, but I do question why Neo would need sleeping pills when she's, like, 7. You know what I mean? When she's, like, 12 years old at this point. So I don't know. Like, maybe it's for the mom and not her, because the mom gets migraines, apparently. Maybe they, you know, bribed the doctor to prescribe it so they could get Neo to basically go to sleep when she was, because this knocks the teacher out. Like, usually for melatonin, even if you take some, you need to be in the headspace. Like, you can't just take melatonin and then I'll be, like, you know, asleep in my chair, right?
No,
like,
that happens to me.
Does it? I mean, it depends
I wouldn't
on the
be drugged. I would just be, like, really, like, sleepy. But
you need to allow yourself to fall asleep.
So that's but melatonin is over the counter. That's prescription.
This is the strong shit. Is basically what I'm getting at.
And she also put, like, 5 of them in there.
And so that's what I'm saying. I'm like, are you tranquilizing your children? Like, I'm just wondering, okay? So yeah, Trivia illusions herself to be the tutor and then leaves after she drugs her and then wears her face in clothes. And so what's interesting about this is, like, I thought that she tricked her father, but then I was like, did she really fool him, though? Because she's not talking, and that's the biggest tell, right? Because she's like, oh, I'm sure, the dad says something like, oh, I'm sure you're tired, like, of talking for the both of you, right? And so the dad later says that he knew about all this because of the stores alerting him. But I have to wonder if he knew from that moment, but he just decided to let it go to see what she would do to use it against her later. Like, I wonder if the dad was manipulative in that way to show her, like, you can go out, but I always have control. Because I feel like that there's two options. The dad's either a fucking idiot or he knew the whole time. Like, there's no in between, right? And so, you know, there's some speculation, like, Neo's like, is he really saying that or is he bluffing? I feel like he knew, but he wanted to go out and see what she would do so then he could then say, like, I know where you are at all times. All of the stores called me to you know, because they weren't fooled by you. Like, you know, I feel like that's something interesting, right? Because I thought that the dad was just fucking dumb, and I was going to rip on the dad for being, like, stupid, but I think genuinely he just wanted this to happen,
kind of
right?
Power move.
Yeah. So what's interesting is they say that the professor, the tutor, lost a student during training at Patch Combat School. And so what's interesting about this is, could this possibly be Gretchen if the timeline goes up? Because
Gretchen
they blame Ozpin, but, like,
I think I assume like Gretchen was Beacon and not...
Yeah, but, like, this is like, isn't it all related? Like, does Ozpin not have dominion over these lesser schools in the area?
I think if they made it that it was someone in Vale who died, I don't know. Maybe potentially it could have been Gretchen.
So that's the only thing I was sort of thinking about, but yeah, so she blames herself for putting too much faith in her. So basically, the teacher was getting everybody else to safety and thought that the girl, or I think that they said it was a girl, could hold her own, and she didn't. She died, right? And so I do wonder if that could be Gretchen and some sort of, like, connected situation. Because, like, you know what I mean? Because they kind of make a big deal about it. Like, how many students die every year going to combat school? Because, like, you know...
I can think of 2 students that died during Ruby's time.
I know, but I'm saying, like, in terms of, like, this isn't even Beacon. This is, like, high school Beacon, right? This is Patch Combat School. This is where Ruby was Well, see, okay. Is Patch Combat School Signal? Or is Signal a different school? Because Ruby was at Signal, right?
Yes.
But Patch Combat School, Patch is like the little place where they live.
Yeah.
So is there 2?
Maybe.
Then why didn't Ruby go to the one that's near home? Why did she?
Because
you know what
Crow
I mean?
worked at Signal?
Maybe it was just for Crow. I don't know. Because I'm like, Tai Yang is a teacher, but does he work in Patch where it would be? You know what I mean? I'm thinking about the commute. Why would Ruby take the boat over to Signal when Patch Combat School is on Patch? But anyway.
About the commute.
Anyway, I'm just thinking. Well, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because is Patch Combat School also Signal, but maybe they changed the name to get out of the press or something like that, right? Like,
who knows?
That's the only reason why I'm bringing it up. I'm not trying to be.
Didn't remember Signal.
I'm not trying to be like pedantic about it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to just be like, are these 2 separate schools, or are they the same one? And like, there was a name change at some point because, you know, death. Oops, right?
Murder.
Bad press, right? Anyway, so then Trivia goes out to go shopping, and she drives the tutor's car to do it too. And I think that's so funny because she says, I played driving simulators, it'll be fine. Like, she doesn't say that, but that's her reasoning, and I think
like
that's
to think
so
that she plays Grand Theft Auto, but like tries to be a law-abiding citizen, and that's where she gets it from.
And so then she goes to Kaiser's department store. Again, that could be a color or inspiration or something, but who knows. And so she finds a black beaded necklace from the store, which is, like, obviously
the one she
Raven
wears.
And Coco wore the same one at one point, right? Because they were just reusing the assets. And so it's also kind of funny to think that Remnant has mass-produced clothing departments, like a department store. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just people making clothes.
But like, what if it's like, okay,
where,
so
like,
Coco...
is there faunus labor?
Coco's from Vale.
Yes.
Raven probably lived in Vale for a time.
Sure.
And Neo's in Vale.
Yes.
It's entirely possible that they went to the same handmade
That's what I'm saying. Well, no, but it's not I mean, it could be. It could be handmade. But, like, is there, like, what do you call it? Are there sweatshops? Are there fawness sweatshops for this department store? Like, there's just, I don't know, like, wouldn't it have been more effective if instead of a department store, it was like a flea market or something where people had handmade goods hunter? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's somebody with a multiplication semblance or something like that where they just are able to mass produce that way. But, like, I just have questions about how real world this is. A department store, guys. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I just think it's funny. It's funny to me how there is just regular life. And there's tags on the clothes. She gets caught by the clothing detectors. You know what I mean? Like when she walks out of the store. Yeah. And I think that's just so funny. And like, I don't know. I know
it is weird because this is a fantastical world where like there's magic and monsters.
But we have a department store.
But there's also
possible
like the
unethical clothing practices. Exactly. It's like Hudson's Bay or something. It's like just it's the winners in your local mall. Like what is this?
Imagine though, like imagine like if Ty bought that for Raven at the store, and then Raven was just like, this stupid cheap shit. But then she likes it. Then she likes it.
Anyway, and so she kicks the security guard. Neo lifts a sign up giving her a 9.5 and runs. So that is again kind of like RWBY Chibi. I'm assuming that was a score, like how they do it in, what do you call it, swimming competition or whatever. They just...
You're thinking diving and gymnastics.
Yes, exactly, right? And so they just lift up the little sign. I thought that was funny. I thought that was cute. So she bought, okay, this is Neo's shopping list, guys. 3 dozen boots, a dozen tops, 7 jackets, 3 shirts, and then her parasol, which that's the important part of all of this, right?
The parasol and then the necklace.
Yes. Now
she doesn't even wear the necklace anymore.
No.
So obviously she wasn't that
fuck that shit anymore.
I got this at Claire's, and she throws it over her head.
Now Trivia pretends to be her mom with a migraine as she sneaks past the dad, and so I wrote down the dad's an idiot. Right?
Imagine if the.
But at this point, the dad actually knows, so he's not as much of an idiot anymore.
Yeah.
But she says she finds it easy to mimic other people, but then her semblance cracks. And so that's the thing. Yeah. The dad knows it's her, but is it because her semblance cracks? Is he genuinely an idiot? If the semblance didn't crack, would he not know? Is my question. But he does say, like, you know, I knew that you were there. I convinced all the businesses not to press charges. I forbid semblance use and impersonating others. And so then the dad's like, oh yeah, and I knew about the tutor's pass. That's why it was easy to silence her, because she isn't able to get another job anywhere.
And you paid her off.
Exactly. So that's pretty fucked up. And then he has to give her a severance in a new car. So I'm like, this is the easiest paycheck that this woman's ever gotten. All she had to do
was get drugged by a preteen.
Exactly. And then she got a car and a severance. Like that, she's living large, okay? You know what I mean? She doesn't need to work a day in her life because of Neo. So really, I mean, I take it, you know what I mean? Like, if it were me, I wish I had that sort of money. But anyway, yes. And so the dad says that he knew exactly where she was. And so this is kind of the interesting part of this chapter, right? Why do you feel the need to take those things? We give you everything you need. Everything you ask for. And so Neo says, like, in her head, because she can't tell her father this, right? I wanted something of my own that didn't come from you. Like, she wanted to do something of her own. It's like an independence thing, right?
Yeah.
And so then the dad again says, if you're ever going to speak up for yourself, now's the time. I want to hear my daughter's voice for the first time. So say something, anything, and it will all be forgiven, right? And so that's sort of the attitude, again, of the dad here. And so this is where I was like, I don't want to say torn on the dad, but the dad seems really, really desperate again. But then I was like, oh yeah, but fuck him though. You know what I mean? Because this is all about like independence and wanting something, you know, for herself. And he won't, this is where I think the dad's an asshole. Neo is ready to type her explanation. Yeah. She's ready to express to her father that she wants independence and she wants things that didn't come from him. But if it isn't said his way, he will not listen, right? I don't want to read my daughter's words. You're going to tell me how you're feeling, right? And so that's where I guess we lose, again, sympathy for the dad here, is because he is like, it's my way or the highway, right? if you won't say it how I want you to, I will not consider or validate your feelings, right? So I think that was sort of an interesting thing to note. So the dad pays for everything double, and the stolen items will be going to charity, but Trivia basically like throws the umbrella at him because she doesn't want, that's a thing that she doesn't want to lose, right? And so I wrote this down, I think. She thought she was cunning and powerful, but the things she claimed for herself, her parents paid off again. So I think that's the interesting part of this chapter, too, is that Neo thinks she's being sneaky. She thinks that she's tricked her dad twice, right? She thinks that she's gotten away with this crime, but then actually she didn't. Everyone just like...
She's not independent so long as she has her father.
Exactly, right?
Lord knows she finds a way to fix that later.
Oh, gosh. And so then she finds that the dad is actually afraid of her as she throws the umbrella. And so
that was the first time where I'm like, oh, wow, she's got issues. Because before, this is just like teen angst. I mean, the driving thing was pretty heinous. But the, like, I'm physically threatening my father. I'm like, okay, she's got... I mean, they've all got damage.
For sure. Because now she says, like, now everything is perfect. Right? So kind of the implication of that is like, oh, well, I scared him, so I win for today. And so, yes, she just wants that independence. And so now we are heading to chapter 6 in this 2-hour video. Who knows? So who is they? Who is this? Okay, so there's the shop owner that has like a technology shop, like a technological repair shop.
Yes.
And I guess him and the customers are hiding from Roman in the dark, which I think is so funny. But yeah. Oh, and a boy records Roman on his phone, and Roman breaks it. Like, the boy's trying to record evidence of Roman, like, threatening the shop
Is he gonna put it on, like, Remnant Vine on MySpace?
I think it was supposed to be, like, you know, YouTube for the police. Like, who knows? It's like Twitter, right?
NarkTube.
Exactly. And so basically, like, this kid tries to record him, and Roman's like, LOL, that's funny. And so he reverse engineers Atlas Tech and clones it for the black market, right? So that's like this guy's like whole business. And I think that that's actually very interesting, especially when you consider like Roman and the Paladins later on and how he knew how they worked and things like that. Like, I'm sure Watts helped with some of that stuff, like with blueprints and things, but I thought that that was interesting. And so what's interesting about this is, though, the shop owner says, my hands are worth more than you will ever be, like during this conflict, right? And Roman says, so you think you're better than me just because you went to school and learned a trade? And
which
so again,
I feel is a little bit of like an inferiority complex.
Yeah, and so we have some trade school references, which I thought was, again, pretty funny, but...
Listen, they have toilets, they need plumbers.
I know, but I just thought, again, that was kind of funny, but also it felt that was a very forced thing to say. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't say, like, he didn't say that. Maybe he meant it, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I thought I was just, like, oh, Roman, oh my God. Like, you know, it's definitely inferiority, right? Because you know that, like, saying, like, if you see a subtweet and you think it's about you, even if it's not, it may be about you, you know what I mean? Like, it may apply to you type of thing. I feel like that, like, Roman, like, basically took... Like, you know what I mean? He reached for that one a little bit, right? Just because he felt like, oh, you think you're better than me? You know, like, he got really angry. And so Roman, basically, this is where Roman gets in trouble, like, with the Malachites, right? So he's been taking double payments from this reverse engineer businessman and all of the businesses that Malachite takes money from. And so he's been taking a double cut. And so that's why, like, the business guy can't, keep up with the payments anymore. Like, basically, Roman goes to collect. He takes Malachite's half, but then he basically upped the price on everyone so he could get half for himself, right? And so now... Drafting
someone who's extorting people.
Exactly. And so basically, like, he's gotten extra money under Miss Malachite's nose, but now they found out, right? So Cammy is Chameleon, which I didn't realize at first, like, when they were, you know what I mean? I thought they were two different characters. But anyway, and so Cammy basically requested this job to go catch Roman and, like, get rid of him and everything. Because she wanted to ask why they weren't good enough for him. And so her whole thing is, like, Roman, you're already making money. You're part of the gang. Like, why did you feel the need? Like, what do you need more money for, right? Oh, something interesting was, spiders don't leave, they get squished. I want more. I want everything. I want people to know my name, right? So again, that inferiority complex thing that you were talking about just now really comes out right here, right? And he already has that, and he has a bounty on him right now because of, like, obviously stealing from Miss Malachite. And so then we have Lemon, who is a crime lord in in somewhere else in Mistral. So I don't know why I wrote that down, but I guess they were saying that he would go work for someone else, and then they were like, LOL, no you won't. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we'll keep hunting for you, no other gang will like take you or something. Oh yes, and so now there's a new material adapted to, I guess, maybe hard light dust for invisibility cloaks that basically aids, like it's kind of a support material for Chameleon's semblance and everything. So I thought that was interesting because that also gives us, like, in a weird way, a timeline towards the RWBY book, like the other ones, because Velvet's dad invented the hard light dust, right?
Yeah.
Or at least Velvet utilizes it for her camera.
Yes.
And so, like, that's like a whole thing. So that's sort of interesting. And so this is where we get his mother left him in an orphanage in Windpath. Oh, okay. So yes, the mother left him in that settlement. So now we know that. Good. Great. You know,
I remember we didn't bring it up the first time, but yes. Like,
yeah, like before we were like, oh, but was Windpath where he was with his mom, or was that where the orphanage was?
And I guess that kind of explains his inferiority complex, because he wants, like, stability in his life.
He wants that big city life, too, and, like, he was, like, in a settlement and everything. He was an orphan, probably not a lot of money. And so he says the only person he trusted was his mom. And I kind of like... I wish that we knew why Roman's mom abandoned him, but at the same time, isn't that kind of the appeal of not knowing everything about Roman, I guess? Like, he doesn't know why his mom did it, or at least he doesn't share that with the class, right? And so, I don't know, that's something interesting to think about. I wonder if we'll ever find out why the mom did it, like why she abandoned Roman at the orphanage and everything. And what I was thinking about, I know this is so random, this is like a crack theory, but like, Nora's mom abandoned her, right? And Roman... They both have orange hair. So what if Roman's the one that made it to the settlement, whereas Nora is the one that made it to, like, a different settlement?
She was in Mistral, too.
Yeah, she was in Mistral. So what if
would be so weird.
What happened is that they were running from the Grim? Okay, imagine this. This would be so weird.
This is the second time we've had, like...
no reason for this, okay?
This is the second time we've had, like, oh, we're sure about this. Theories about
No. I'm not sure.
Nora's
I just made this up right now, okay? So here's... You know what I mean? I'm not saying that this is true, but imagine this, okay? Imagine Roman, Nora, and Mom are going through the woods, okay, one day. You know what I mean? And say, like, Roman is more of a... like, you know, a child, like an 8-year-old, whereas, like, Nora's more of, like, a toddler or something. I guess we would need to make this work out age-wise. So let's say that Roman is 13 and Nora is 4, because I feel like that's a little bit younger than Neo if we're trying to mess with the timeline stuff, okay? So, like, Nora's basically, like, a toddler or a child, whereas Roman is, like, almost teenager, right? He's, like, preteen, right? And so they get attacked by the Grim in the woods, okay? Like, the mom, you know, she, like, makes a quick choice. I guess she runs away, like, with Roman, because, and you could also say, like, that there seems to be still sexism in Remnant, so you could also make the thing of, like, I'll take the boy, you know what I mean? Take the boy, fuck the girl type of, like, situation.
Can we officially put that no sexism in
I think that we can put that to bed. Yeah. That is not true anymore, so who knows why? But here's my thing, like, I wonder if what happened is that the mom didn't mean to abandon Nora, but it just sort of happened as they were running away, and they thought that...
I didn't mean to abandon
No. Like, they thought that, you know, they were getting attacked by Grim. Okay, this is the whole thing. They were getting attacked by Grim, and the mom basically, like, didn't mean to, like, lose Nora, but couldn't keep up with, like, both kids, right? So, you know, they're running in the woods, and they think that Nora's dead, and the mom feels so much guilt over her incapability to protect both children, she gives Roman up to the orphanage. Because she thinks, like, you know what? Like, I abandoned my daughter. Like, whether it was conscious, I don't want it to be a conscious decision. I don't want it to be like, I'll take the boy because he's more valuable in society. I don't want it to be like that. That was just an idea that I threw out. But I think it's more interesting if it was, like, that they were running away and they just, like, she, you know, lost, like, grip on her, and they both, like, fell over a log or something, like, they fell down the mountain or something like that, and, like, she felt so guilty that she gave Roman up to, like, an orphanage or something like that. Anyway, what would be the purpose of this? Absolutely nothing. Roman's dead.
Making complex a plot that did not need to be complex.
Yeah, I mean, Roman's dead. Nora's not even in the void.
That's
right?
true.
And so, like, there really is no reason. I just think that would be kind of interesting, like, as an idea of this parent being like, I was incapable of taking care and protecting my children, so now, because like, what are the other reasons to basically give up your child? You know what I mean? And so I feel like that the mom's motivation is sort of shrouded in mystery, is both interesting but also frustrating, because I want to know. I want to know why the mom did it. You know what I mean? Like, was it like she didn't have enough food, or she thought an orphanage was better? Did she just not want him? Like, we don't know, right? But he was the only person that, you know, he ever trusted. And so what if that trust was broken? I mean, it was broken by leaving him there, but what if it was broken in another way, like through not being able to protect him or something like that? And so she, you know, she basically gave him up in a sense. I don't know. It's just some things to think about.
Bad luck Gingers have in Remnant.
The mom's not dead. She left him there. So why? Right? That's kind of open-ended in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not just an orphan. Your mom left you there. And there's obviously a variety of reasons for that we see in fiction, right? Like food insecurity, or like, I think that somebody else could provide a better life for you. But I wonder, like, is there like something like deeper going on?
Also, how old was he? Was he like a little baby?
Exactly. Was he
left
a baby?
On a doorstep?
Exactly. Was he a child? Because he seems to remember this. Why would he trust his mom if he didn't remember her? Because he says the only person he ever trusted was his mom. Right? And that person abandoned him. And so you could say that that's like, you know...
He's speaking,
like you were supposed to trust your parents? Hypothetically?
Like he probably did when he was...
But it seems like he may remember.
Maybe.
So,
maybe
anyway.
very, very young, like a 6 or a 7.
So, yeah, so I wrote down Roman can't allow himself to trust, basically. And so basically, he's running away at this point. He's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And so he says Vacuo's too hot and wouldn't welcome a newcomer, even though there's lots of crime. And then Atlas is too cold, and like the crime there, I don't know, it kind of implies
Mistral
like
just right.
Well, no, Vale.
Vale's
right? And so Ironwood, it seems like, Ironwood's a dictator, so can't go there. Like, it does kind of seem like, people get caught easily in Atlas type of thing.
But then again, if you look at like Cinder's backstory, they seem pretty permissive of crime, so I'm starting to suspect that he just didn't like the temperature. Same reason why I probably don't want to move to Alaska.
And so then he basically, you know, runs away. Right? Yeah, so he basically just runs away. And at this point, I did write down not feeling that usual giddy feeling that I get when I read the RWBY books. And so that was kind of sad. You know what I mean? To be like, I'm not getting that feeling yet. I think it was more the second half. Did you have any notes for this?
I'm just looking through it. Well, mine are not chapter, mine are page number.
Oh, okay.
Other than Mistral has a higher crime rate than Vale, which I thought was interesting. I believe at some point they reference the girl who fell through the world. Oh yes, that is much later. We'll talk about that much later. Then we're only at page 70 of a 300-page book. We're on chapter 7. It's okay. So, Trivia is practicing her lock picking because her parents keep putting locks on her door and she keeps breaking them, right? They joke that hard light force field would be better, or be cheaper than putting her through Beacon. And so it's kind of funny that there was the entertainment of the idea that because of her semblance, she could have gone to Beacon and be a huntress, but it was too expensive or something. Like, they basically say, oh yeah, like a force field would be cheaper than going to Beacon, right? But like, Neo could go to Beacon. Yeah, and so, well, here's the thing that I don't understand, okay? They have money, so isn't that just an excuse? I think they just didn't. I think these people just really don't care. Also, how did Blake pay for school if Beacon is expensive? Did she get in on, like, a scholarship or something? And, like, Red and Nora, how did they get in? They don't have any money, they're orphans. I view that there's, like, I don't know, maybe, like, academic... Like they could like get a scholarship. Maybe OSAP? What's the Nora and Ren took out a loan and they just never paid it back. Student loans. Yeah. How did Jean? Because Jean's parents didn't know he was going, so they didn't pay. So he got student loans by himself. So the student loan industry in Vale is very permissive. But see, that's what I'm saying. But I kind of viewed it as like going to the military, and that like you would just like, hey man, show up, we pay for your food, and then afterwards you work for us for a certain amount of time. Right. But yeah, they say that the force field would be cheaper than putting her through Beacon. So I guess they just didn't want her to go to Beacon. Like, I feel like that's just bullshit. Yeah. Because they have money, right? They just didn't want her to be, again, in the spotlight and to be a huntress. And to be, but then wouldn't that be good protection for her, though? But I feel like that's to, like, kick some ass.
I feel like that's kind of the mom's point, though, later.
Maybe they didn't want to because, like, they're criminals?
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking they wouldn't want her to go to Beacon because then she would be basically on the law side, the law-abiding side, right? But then the mom kind of... The school, the girls' school is kind of a compromise between teaching her how to fight, but then also teaching her how to be a criminal.
Which also makes me think, like, if Caramel and, like, Lisa Lavender also went to these schools, can they also, like, fence and kick some ass in, like, a tough situation? That'd be hilarious if we got to see Lisa Lavender fight.
And so then she wants to melt the lock. And this is impulsive because there was an easier way to do it. I'm not entirely sure what that way was.
She realized she could have used a hairdryer.
No. I think that she was already doing that. A hairdryer to melt, maybe? To melt the lock?
To loosen it a bit.
Yeah, so she realizes that there was another way eventually, but she decides to take hairspray, right, like aerosol, in a flame, and try to melt it that way. Then the door catches on fire.
How is that such a flame? Did they use oil paint?
Well, it's an oak door. It's wood.
But you can't just light a plank of wood on fire. No, you can't.
Oh, okay.
If you did that to that, I mean, it would burn, it would smell awful, but I wouldn't just, like, whoosh.
But what about the hairspray? Isn't hairspray a...
Yeah, it's flammable, but it would also, like... It's not like a flamethrower that it would stick to.
Well, maybe this is unreliable narrator. Maybe Neo coated the door with, you know what I mean? Maybe she coated the door with gasoline. Okay, we don't know.
We should do like a Mythbusters type situation where we try to light a door on fire.
Well, it would need to be wood though. Like it would have to be like no varnish, just wood door. You know what I mean?
But would they have like an unvarnished wood door?
Maybe.
This would be we should
have
Is there
varnish in Remnant Hunter? Like, you know what I mean? Poor E.C. Myers is just gonna be watching this like, oh my god.
First off, E.C. Myers is a very busy man. He doesn't have to spare 5 hours to watch this video. Secondly, we should do like a Patreon level. It's just like above like the...
We will buy a door.
We will buy an oak door and film ourselves trying to light it on fire.
Oh my god.
We could do that. Then we could do like what else stuff would she have? Like what if she put like petroleum jelly on top of it and then lit it on fire?
So the pillow caught on fire. And so she actually says in this scene that she stole the parasol 5 years ago. So now she is 15. And so this is where I thought that Roman didn't age and that Neo had aged to close the gap. Some people disagree. But I thought that because, like, Roman goes on the run to Vale. Did it really take Roman 3 years to get to Vale? Right? And get an apartment and a condo? Like, I don't think so. So I think that people actually are wrong. Like, I will maintain that it's not a 10-year age. Because people said, but you can tell because, like, Roman, you know, he gets the condo and he sees on TV that Neo is burning her house down. And, like, yes, but doesn't that point to, if she stole the parasol 3 years ago and she's 15, Roman didn't take 3 years to run away, did he? Or was it 3 years in between the Malachite situation and then him killing the guy from the dealer, like from the technology shop and running? Because I guess that's what people meant.
Unless it's like, it's what's in the current time, like the previous chapter.
Yeah, unless the previous chapter was
at the same time as this one.
Yeah, that's basically that's the only way, right?
I mean, it could be. I mean, I guess either way, it's kind of loose, so it could be interpreted either way.
Because people probably would argue, well, the technology shop thing happened, and it happened at the same time that Neo was burning her house down, and then Roman just, like, got there in, like, a week or something. And so that Roman did actually age 3 years. It has been 3 years since the Malachite kidnapping situation.
Maybe, but then, like, in 3 years, he would have done a lot more in Vale than just hang around.
Well, no, not in Vale. Like, it was 3 years of him babysitting the Malachite, like, after he stopped babysitting the Malachite twins and then stealing from Miss Malachite. That would have been the 3 years. But that's a long 3 years for him to be double dipping in Miss Malachite's stuff and for her not to notice. That's the other thing is I feel, and that's all Roman wanted to do in 3 years is double dip in the business. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Roman's so impatient. He's constantly scheming. So I feel like that's my argument for closing the gap on the age gap thing. You're telling me for 3 years after he arrested Parrot and like those people, all he did was, you know, basically exploit the businesses Miss Malachite was already exploiting.
So that
right?
with yours, instead of a 9-year age gap, it is now a 6-year age gap.
Yeah, or like 5 or something. You know what I mean?
So then it's 18 Neo.
So
and
basically
23 Roman.
Yeah, so basically Roman was double dipping soon after, then he went to Vale, and so, like, you know what I mean? Roman's on a more, like, short timeline in his chapters compared to Neo in her, like, long. Anyway, does it really matter if it's a 10-year age gap or not? Like, no. Like, it doesn't really matter, but I think it's kind of funny to think of Roman just stealing for 3 years and not having any, like, higher ambition. Anyway, so then Neo has to escape from her house, so she uses the parasol, right? And so she says that she felt like Alex falling through the world. And so I looked this up. So Alex is the goddess of, like, the protector of humanity. It's a goddess hero. I think that's more Roman.
Wasn't also that a reference to the...
yes, the girl who fell through the world in the case of, like, the fairy tale reference, you know what I mean, in the most recent volume. And then also people think that Alex is supposed to be Alice, like Alice in Wonderland.
Oh,
now,
so it's like a dude, because they do the gender swap quite often.
No, not that it's a dude, they just changed the name. They just didn't want to call her Alice, they wanted to call her Alex.
Still the girl, right.
To have, how do you say, to have a reference to being the protector of humanity, a fairy tale, a different fairy tale inspiration from just Alice. Now here's my question. Is this character a real person that we may meet in volume 9? And I sort of had this idea, I guess we'll talk about this again, like in a proper theory video, but I sort of wonder, could this person be, because some people thought it was Salem. Some people thought that Alex was an allegory for Salem falling through the darkness, and then when she continued to exist, Remnant had changed. That she fell through pre-snap Remnant into post-snap Remnant, and people thought that it was supposed to be a metaphor, and Salem was the girl who fell into a different world. However, unless somebody has taken artistic liberties with Salem's story, this seems to imply that this is a different fairy tale and does not connect to Salem at all, and this is a different girl. And so if this is real, you would have to wonder how did the girl end up falling through the world? Because Osmond knows about that story. Osmond knows where all the fairy tales come from, right? And so is somebody already in there, big chillin'? Has somebody already tried to create portals like this in the past, and they're big chilling in this world, right? So I have some ideas. One, we had an idea that the Summer Maiden was in the vault world, basically, and that this has been done before, and that she will be big chillin', as we say, in there. But imagine, right, if there's no time progression in whatever this world is, and so this is the Summer Maiden from 100 years ago, that fell through the world, because fairy tales don't travel as much as they used to. Osmond says that. So what if, like, this story was based off of the Summer Maiden, who has been in the vault, like, basically immortal, like perpetually young, because there's no time in the vault for like 100 or 200 years. And that she is a young person, but mentally she's also a very old. She's like Anne, right? You know what I mean? Almost in a way. Like, she's basically, she should be grandma, but she's not grandma. She's like young still. And so I thought that could be an option, that could be the Summer Maiden that fell through the world. Like, but then you would wonder, why didn't Osmond do that with all the maidens for safety?
Maybe they didn't want to.
Yeah.
She was the only one that agreed to it.
Exactly, because, you know, these people still have families.
Maybe she was afraid. She was like the first person to ever do it.
Yeah.
And she was afraid of Salem because she didn't quite, and because, I mean, obviously.
And then also you need the creation relic for that, and so that's problematic.
Osmond doesn't clue people in, so I'd imagine that, you know, she didn't realize what she was getting into.
Yeah, I guess my argument would be, first of all these girls have families, right?
Oh my God.
Right, you know, and some of them are accidentally chosen, so that's the other thing. But we have to keep in mind,
unless she was the first one.
There was a point during history where Osmond had all of the relics, and then he gave them to the schools. So, you know, logically, I guess, you would think that it was possible for Osmond to just go, whee! Open some portals back in the day when he had the creation relic all the time, but as it moved over to Atlas, that became a implausible sort of situation. And, right, because they raised Atlas, making more portals to that area would cause Atlas to fall. And so in a way, Osmond almost doomed this girl to be trapped there forever, right? And maybe that was Osmond's big plan against Salem, is that Salem can never get all of the relics because one girl is in the vault world, locked in there for all eternity, because removing the staff in order to make another portal to get her out would cause Atlas to fall. And that could very much make Ozpin a bit more morally ambiguous as well. More than he already is, by the way, right? He already is. Yeah. But it could do that even more so, because he has caused a girl to, like, live this lonely life in this vault world, you know, for years and years and years in order to make sure Salem doesn't have the final piece. And that can make Salem very upset if she finds out about that, and that's why she goes after Team RWBY. Because we had that idea that she may open the portal to go after Team RWBY and go into that world. Also, there could be the idea that it's a Silver-Eyed Warrior, because we have Protector of Humanity, but I think Protector of Humanity could be very fascinating if it is the Summer Maiden, because think about it, she has sacrificed her life to protect all of humanity, so Salem cannot possibly get the relic, because she can't be killed in that world, right? And then she also, Salem cannot enter that world as well until she can, so no good. That's no good, right? And so I wonder if that could be Volume 9 relevant, is what I'm saying, because they've mentioned it a couple times now in the past couple volumes and in this book. Like, something is happening.
That could be its own theory video of, like, what if the Summer Maiden, or what if...
Oh, sure, because I thought it was Star for sure. Now I don't think it is anymore. So yeah, Trivia paracels to the ground, basically like a movie. You know what I mean? She basically umbrellas to the floor. The mansion's on fire, and so the mom's like, oh, thank the brothers, you're all right. So I like that. I like, you know, the brothers, the gods.
Yeah, she's religious, which I find interesting.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not, but it could be, oh, thank God you're all right. Like, we say that pretty casually.
I know,
as
but
well.
it's just like, because, like, Crow says, like, most people don't even know the story anymore, but she does.
Maybe part of her training at the Lady
I was
Beatrice.
wondering that, like, is that why she's so fucked up? She went to a girls-only Catholic school?
Oh,
that would explain stuff.
So this is interesting. Papa yelled, punished her, but he had never hurt her before. And I said, but didn't he hold her by the ankles a couple chapters ago? I wonder, is that repressed memory, or she just didn't think that counted?
I don't know. That could be fun in the right context.
Because Papa, I'm calling him Papa. The dad hurt her. No. The dad did hurt her at that point, right? Like, in this scene when she sets the mansion on fire. So that's why she says it. She's shocked that her dad has resorted to this. But I'm like, didn't your dad do that before, though, sis? Like, you know. The dad says she could have blown all of them up at this point. So this is where we got, like, the hints. Like some because I wrote down, like, illegal dust, meth lab, right?
Really? You guessed that? Wow. I just...
Why else would it all blow them up?
I don't know.
There's no other reason.
I was like, oh, you know, dads are being hyperbolic.
So then the mom breaks Neo's illusion. And so this is where we get Neo is the one that comforted her, told her what to do, knew what she wanted, understood her. She's part of Trivia and would only leave when Trivia doesn't need her. But without Neo being on the outside as an illusion, since the mom broke it, she's now on the inside of Trivia. So this is where basically things change.
Yes.
The mom breaks the Neo illusion, says she's not real, and now she can't manifest Neo on the outside anymore. So it's kind of this representation that Neo was once just an outside influence, and she sort of, Trivia treated Neo like a different person, like an individual person. But the reality now, I guess you could say, is that, like, because the mom broke the Neo on the outside, and Neo was, like, in here.
It was the Neo inside all along.
Exactly. Neo represented everything Trivia didn't have or couldn't be. But now, without Neo being an outside individual, Neo has been broken, and so now Trivia can actually hold that inside of herself. She doesn't need an outside Neo to be Neo. She's actually taken Neo and put it inside so she can be Neo as herself.
Out of context, that sentence is insane.
I know. She says that she feels whole now, and so now she has some of Neo's attitude, right? And so I think that that's, like, the interesting part is, like, this actually made her feel more whole. The mom destroying the element of Neo being, like, an outside of herself influence.
Phenomenon.
Right, phenomenon, right?
An external phenomenon.
Exactly. And so then they say, it's clear you don't want to be part of this family anymore. And I'm like, bro, y'all didn't want her. I wrote that down. The mom seems to want to send her to Beacon because she says that she'll have friends and be able to control her semblance. So I did not get that correct. That was my prediction. That was wrong. But Trivia sees that as a different prison, right? And so she basically sets her house on fire by accident, trying to melt off the lock her parents put. And so that's the other thing. If there was a genuine fire, Neo would have died, by the way. Like, that's the other thing. Yeah. You should never put a lock on your children's room that they cannot access, right? Like, it's fine for your door being locked is helpful in the case of a fire, or your door being closed, right? You should always close the door when you go to sleep because that helps.
Is this where we're at now? Fire safety?
That stops the fire from traveling faster, but Don't do it. Don't lock your children in for this particular reason, is basically what I'm saying. Do you have anything about this chapter, Hunter?
Not particularly. I do like that it was the kind of turning point of Neo becoming Neo. Mm-hmm. I think from this point, her pieces become a little more interesting, and it's less just like a person in the wrong crowd with a bad influence, and Neo just like being herself and being kind of wily. And screwing with people. And I think after this point is about the halfway point that it starts to pick up.
All right, so chapter 8. Hunter and I have decided that we are going to continue on until they meet, and then we will split this video into two because we are getting tired. Okay, so let's talk about this. Roman has a real estate agent because he's looking at condos. It's like, you can see Beacon Academy from this window. Like, this is such a good location, right?
So, like, condo boards exist.
I know.
I mean, it makes sense that they exist because it's a metropolis in a fantasy world.
And I'm just like, we can never escape Beacon because Beacon is always. Because think about it, the DC comics, Beacon. Okay, the anthology. Beacon, the Viz Media manga, Beacon. Like I said, you can take RWBY out of Beacon, but you can't take
Beacon out of RWBY.
Beacon out of RWBY, okay? You know what I mean?
And arguably, they haven't taken RWBY out of Beacon.
Well, I'm saying RWBY the team.
I know, I guess so.
That is my joke. Okay, so thank you. So yeah, he takes he takes the condo, and I am reading Combat School isn't for everyone because that is where we got combo from. Anyway, he takes the condo, and the lady says that she wishes that she could go to Beacon, but she flunked out. And so that's when he says Combat School isn't for everyone, right? And so I feel like that's also sort of like a hint towards like the Neo thing. Like, Neo could have been a huntress, but would she really want to be a huntress?
She would have been a pretty morally unscrupulous. He would have been like one of those huntresses that like left their noble path or however Crow described it.
And so I feel like that's almost like a thing, right? Roman tries to trip a kid who is walking on his scroll and takes the kid's money. And so again, like, Roman's not a good guy, guys. He's stealing from children, literal children, right? And so he's basically studying the city.
Mind you, he's also trying to kill children, like Ruby's 16.
And so Roman made printed calling cards for people so that people will find it when they go to look for their wallet, okay? Like, he is the fucking Phantom Thieves, you know what I mean? Like, you know, but it's not even the Phantom Thieves because he's saying his actual name and his actual identity, and somehow they don't fucking catch him. So I guess the police are still incompetent, even in,
you think you could just go to all of the, like, printing places and I'm like, someone came here
that's the other thing, right?
Made you've been robbed. And when you made those, like, hundreds of those you've been robbed by Roman Torchwick.
You know what's funny about that? So my mom and I, this won't be too much of a tangent, don't worry. My mom and I watched this documentary on Netflix about the Mormon church, basically. And there was this guy who, like, faked a bunch of Mormon documents and made them seem real. Like, he basically said, I found this in a library in New York somewhere and brought it to, where is the... Ohio, Seattle, I don't know. Anyway,
Idaho,
wherever the Mormon church is, like, you know, in,
Utah,
Utah, exactly. Okay, so this guy forged all this shit, and nobody thought to go, like, check with the printing press, because that's the whole, not the reveal of the documentary, but, like, as they're, you know, seeing if the documents are fake, they find a printing press in which he commissioned the document where he signed his own name, and they still didn't know for, like, a while that he was faking all this shit. So, like, you know, life imitates art imitates life, you know what I'm saying? So it's not that unreasonable to think that you could put your real name on the calling cards in the printing press and just not get caught still by the shop. Because I was like, why didn't the shop guy, because, okay, so this is real life. Why didn't the shop guy that got commissioned by the Mormon dude, like, not report that, hey, like, you know, this guy, he's printing fake documents at my shop, bro. I guess, but it wasn't like a black market printing shop. It was like a normal ass printing press. You wouldn't be like, oh, you know, like, this guy came in, you know, usually I just print like business cards and stuff, but he wanted like a fake Mormon document. Don't you think that's kind of weird, bro?
I bet you
like,
they see weird shit.
Maybe he was in on it. Who knows? Anyway, don't come for me, Mormon documentary people. But yeah, and so, yeah, Roman does hold the door open for an old lady, though, and doesn't steal from her. So I guess it's just kids he has no sympathy for. The elderly, that's fine, you know? Like, I will let the elderly keep their money, is his mindset. I kind of like that, though, because it's like steal from the rich, you know,
I think he's okay stealing from the
not
poor.
give to the poor. Well, no.
I don't think he gave to the poor. I think he
When
keeps
does
for
he
himself.
steal from the poor, though? He doesn't give to the poor, but when does he
We
steal
don't know
from the
what
poor?
these kids, they might not have very much money.
I mean, if a kid has money on them, chances are that money came from their parents, right? That
yeah,
would
but
be
what
the
if
argument.
that's like, what if it's
What
like
if their lunch money? I know.
here's a hay penny for your lunch. Like, he
I
might
know.
not be a good, I don't.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but like think about even at the beginning, he stole from the rich people that went down on the lower levels, right?
Sure.
And so now he's like, nah, old ladies, we don't steal from them, okay? They need their social security benefits, okay? And so anyway, so the guy at the bank is called Fred. And Fred just graduated, and he's like, I'm not supposed to give you money, and I thought that was
he's
so
like a dog
funny.
faunist, I think, or a donkey faunist.
No, I don't think so.
He was-
I
okay,
didn't
whatever.
write that down. Okay, anyway. In Mistral, people knew how to be robbed. I thought that was so funny. Roman's dialogue here was on point. So he beats up the guards, and now everyone's on the floor. Like, they now understand what a robbery is. In fact, that goes for everyone. I'm gonna collect all your money, wallets, jewelry, if you have it. Chewing gum, if you have chewing gum, I want it. So I thought that again, I wrote that down because I thought it was funny. I love Roman's dialogue. I love that. If, you know, I'm gonna take everything from everyone because you people don't know how to be robbed, so you haven't experienced hardship like me, okay? So if you have chewing gum, I want it, all right? If you have pocket lint, I want it. Like, I love that for him.
Yeah.
And so then we get some, like, huntsman going on here. And so this is where we get
Candy floss and rock salt.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Fucking
Hunter.
love them. They sound like My Little Pony characters.
So we get another
Great.
fight scene. I don't really commentate on those. I'm like, yay! I see it in my head because that's, you know, you read. Do you see things in your head when you read? Some people don't.
Yes,
Some
I
people
do.
can't visualize
I do.
in their mind's
I have
eye.
kind of- yeah, I
So you know, I wonder how this would be though if you can't. Like, you know what I mean?
I
Just
don't know.
to read.
I
like,
can't relate
Roman
to that world
kicked.
existence.
I don't know.
I
But
guess
yeah.
he kicked him. Maybe they don't like reading.
But yeah, and so I think it's the bank thing is funny because like where is the regular schools? Did Fred graduate from like the Beacon branch of accounting? Like I know that we talked about that in
The Beacon School of Finance.
Exactly. And so I thought that was so funny that they're just like I get it. But they're just like accountants and stuff. But like back in the olden days, you didn't need to be an accountant to be
But this
the
isn't
money
the
person.
olden days.
I know. I'm just saying
It's
they
like a
could have
sci-fi
went for
fantasy.
more fantasy where you don't go to school to be an accountant, right? Like back in the day, nobody went to school. People just had jobs. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, they did. You did have to go to like.
no,
a
but I
kind
mean
of-
like back
but it
in
was,
the day, like back in the day.
Okay, I
you
guess
know what
not.
I mean?
But there was still education. It just wasn't like mass college.
That's what I'm
education.
saying. So why do we need mass college education, Hunter?
I don't know, because they have bank tellers. They need bank tellers. I don't know what to tell you.
Embrace socialism.
What's the
you know what I'm saying? But you
What's the
understand what I'm
weirdest-
saying, right?
what's the weirdest job that they could
Like
have
in The
RWBY?
Witcher, there's not like innkeeper school. There's not hospitality college, right?
Okay, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But
So I'm just saying they could have
but
done things
there
a
was
little
like
different.
ancient schools of mathematics.
Yeah, that's fine. But I'm just saying, I think the college thing is just funny. I think it's just
I know.
continuously just funny. Anyway, yeah. So then we get there's a man with long silver hair and a woman with no hair, and I actually wonder. I know that this sounds weird, but I know it's Rock and not Roach, but Roach is the name.
I thought it was Roche. Yeah,
Roach is the name of the horse in The Witcher, and then obviously The
Oh.
Witcher has long silver hair.
Oh, and
so
he
I
does
kind of
too.
wonder because there was
Oh,
a
yeah.
bald person, and then there was the man with the long silver hair, and then the
Yeah.
woman with no hair.
Yeah.
And so I don't know which one was supposed to be which, but I sort of thought like, oh, I
Are
wonder.
there Witcher characters?
I
A
don't
woman
know.
that's
I
bald?
thought that was just a random thing that I thought of. I almost thought it was a Witcher reference for some reason.
I don't know. Does E.C.
Right?
Myers like The Witcher?
I don't know. And so anyway, yeah, so Roman gets away, but everyone knows his name. And then, okay, yeah, then I just wrote down their names. So they got reprimanded, the huntsmen. So this is on the news, right? They got reprimanded for reckless endangerment and destruction of property because the huntsman fucked shit up and didn't catch Roman, right? And Ozpin is on the news. And so he says they hold huntsmen to a higher standard because of the power they wield. And so that's the other interesting thing, right? I don't think Neo should have been a huntress. Because he
She wouldn't have
says,
gotten away with it.
because he says that this strength, this power could be used for good or carelessly. And so I wrote down foreshadowing Neo go to Beacon again? Question mark. I was so sure. I was
I don't
so sure.
know. Like,
But no.
do you think that this book has given you any inclination that Neo is likely to have like a hero turn? A redemption?
Maybe, but that wasn't what I was thinking. Like when I read that, I was like, oh, like, Neo's going to Beacon, oh my gosh, right? Like, that's what I read, but I think that Ozpin's point here is more foreshadowing towards the fact, like, first of all, Neo could be multifaceted in the sense that she gets a redemption arc, but also that you don't need to be a huntress to have power, and that's a very much a problem when it comes to, like, Neo, because she has a lot of strength where she could be a huntress, but she has no moral inclination to be one at this moment anyway, right? And so I think that Ozpin's dialogue here about holding huntsmen to a higher standard was almost supposed to justify to us as the audience why they didn't make, like, they didn't make it so Neo had to go to Beacon Arc. Like, because you may think, like, why would they invent a girls' academy when they could have just sent her to fucking Beacon and had a very similar plot line? But you couldn't. And I think that that's the interesting thing. Because you could argue, well, why not send Neo to Beacon and then have somebody do shady stuff at Beacon and then Roman come in and then that's how they meet and blah, 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 blah. Like, you could have that. Or, like, oh, like, Neo was a huntress and she busted her own parents as a huntress, blah, blah, blah. You could have changed it a lot.
There's an alternative universe.
Point, right? Yeah. That's the point, is that Neo would not be fit for Beacon because she has no inclination to wield her power responsibly.
That would be a fun fan fiction to see Neo went to Beacon.
Because, I mean, there's a lot of fan fiction like that, but I feel like that's the point. And that's why I feel like Neo will not be redeemed as much as she will be the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I would rather not die, so I guess I'll work with Team RWBY. I feel like that's the idea, is that she will side with Team RWBY, but only because they are against Cinder and Salem, and that she will ultimately go against Cinder and Salem, but not be like, oh, well, Neo's good now. Like, no, she'll just... And it would actually be interesting, though, if Neo cared about someone else in the same way that she cared about Roman, and so that could also be her motivation. Like, what if Neo just gets really attached to... I hate to say Jean, because Jean's not like Roman at all, but imagine if Neo gets, like, irrationally attached to Jean for some reason, and that's her reason for turning for some reason. You know
I didn't know I wanted the ship.
Yeah, well, people ship it. It exists. Right? So,
no.
There's Jean X Neo. Yeah, so I think it would be better.
Man.
Let me preface this. I think it would be better if she got irrationally attached to RWBY, because that's a very interesting dichotomy.
Because RWBY's such like a moral upstanding individual.
So I think that would be more interesting. Or some people, I think Phoenix had the theory that Neo would get attached to Roman Penny or Nora because of Roman, right? But Penny is now dead, and Nora's not here. And so I'm trying to think, like, what if she just really likes Jean for some... And Jean's a little morally dubious. He faked his transcripts to get into Beacon.
Sure.
Anyway, I know that sounds so I don't like Jean. Let me preface this. A lot of people think that Jean and Neo shippers are just, like, doing this self-fulfilled fantasy.
There's 134 fanfiction of Neo X.
I almost could see something like that. But I think that the point is that Neo needs to learn to live for herself and not for other people. Yes. So I don't know if that would be good.
Yes.
But it would be funny if the reason why she turns against Cinder ultimately is because she is like, oh, you know what? John's actually a cool guy. He actually understands me. Let's go kill Cinder. Like, you know, maybe not even a romantic thing, but like, hey, you killed John's girlfriend. I also lost Roman. Like, what if they work together? Because I had that theory. Don't you remember that Neo and John were supposed to be foils or like parallels or something? Because John lost Pyrrha, Neo lost Roman. So what if it's more like, you know, like that meme where it's like, my friend asked for no pickles, right? Like, what if Neo gets attached to Jean like that, and like not in a romantic way whatsoever, but more in a, like, I'm gonna fight for this dude because this dude has been wronged. He has lost like I have lost, and Cinder's responsible, and Cinder is also responsible for Roman, so let's go get him. You know, that would be so interesting to me.
I forget how many fanfiction there are of just Jean with every single female character.
But you understand, that would actually be compelling if she has empathy for Jean's situation, and that's why she decides to fight against Cinder, because she realizes they're not that different after all.
No.
Right? And so she doesn't turn good, but she decides, because that's her only reason, the only reason she sides with Roman is because she likes him. Right? Neo's, like, threshold is if I like you,
I feel like Neo would learn to like Yang.
Maybe. That'd be interesting too because of their previous conflict.
Because they're conflict, but they're also Brad.
But I like the Jean foil. I'm sorry, I like it.
Hey, Neo has 2 hands and there's 2 blondes.
Oh my gosh.
Why not?
And so yeah, I don't know. That would actually be kind of fascinating in a way. And so then we have Ozpin warns Roman that next time he crosses a huntsman, things won't be this easy. And so obviously that's foreshadowing to RWBY, right? Hunter's just looking through these fanfiction and these images and like a whole new world.
I'm sorry.
And like we also had that idea because like Neo could turn into Pyrrha, and that would be like there's a lot of fanfiction about that as well.
Yes,
right?
God, I want that to happen just for her to like torture people.
So Saltz and Floss read Haven Academy. And so I think that it's funny because they say Lionheart couldn't be reached for comment. But like Haven puts out the worst huntsman.
Yeah, it really does, don't they?
Don't they? And I guess it's because Lionheart was doing the corruption, and so, you know, maybe that's why. But think about it. You have those 2 idiots on the train, right? Like Dee and Dudley or whatever.
Were they Haven?
We can assume that's where they were working. Right?
Okay, maybe. I guess so.
And then these 2 were from Haven, and they're incompetent. And so I'm just like, Lionheart, what are you doing?
Graduate.
That's what I wrote. I said Haven huntsmen are bad. That's what I wrote. Yeah, so while Roman robbed the bank, Neo's house is on fire. And so he says he misses Chameleon, Brick, Mortar, and Rusty. And I'm like, who the fuck is Rusty, by the way?
I almost wonder if there's been some cut scenes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because I'm like, who the fuck is Rusty? Actually, is Rusty the character from the Grimm campaign? Hold on, let me look it up. I'm just gonna check. No, this is the fan and wiki. Okay, these are just people's OCs. But I thought that would have been funny if Rusty was that dude, like, you know, kind of the...
Eddie Revis's OC
No, not Eddie's. It's, I don't know, who's the guy? Anyway, like, there's this guy with the silver hair in the Grimm campaign. I was like, oh, is that Rusty? No, anyway. Unrelated. Who the fuck is Rusty? That's what I put. Like, Rusty was not mentioned. It does make you think that something was, like, cut, right?
He's gonna be in the sequel.
So, he's just in his house and he's, like, you know, sad. Like, Roman's sad because these moments, these crime moments are meant to be shared, but he's all alone. So that's sad, Roman, and that's the end of chapter 8. Well, that's basically what he says. He says he misses them because these victories are meant to be shared with others, and then he learns the value,
that's true.
You know, of camaraderie.
Because I feel like whereas Neo is generally like, wow, you're nuts, Roman's just a little tsundere, you know?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
More so than Neo.
And so now we have chapter 9, and this will be our last chapter for today because I think chapter 10 is when the worlds start colliding, possibly. Or maybe that's 11. Anyway, well, we're finishing up is what I'm basically saying. So, this is actually only 1 page, so we're gonna blitz by. See, this is what I meant by stuff started getting faster, like when we had to, like, you know, no more world building.
I noticed that my notes, far more scant than they were yours, also got fairly light near the end.
Exactly. So, Neo gets sent to preparatory school. You set a little fire in your house, and next thing you know, your parents are sending you away, which I thought was so funny. But yeah, so like the girls' school thing, again, I feel like we're just throwing the fact that Remnant is egalitarian out the window. That's just not true.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
I don't know.
You know.
Like, would there still be a necessity of girls' schools? Like, would that be something people would care about?
Because
I don't think they would if it was.
Okay,
society.
so it's a school for girls, right?
But it's also very like be ladylike, but there wouldn't be a notion of ladylikeness.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that they wanted to do gender equal because they didn't want to deal with gender discrimination as part of the plot.
They were already going to fumble racism. They also didn't want to fumble sexism.
Or homophobia, right? And they've done a good job of no homophobia. But you could also argue that homophobia stems from sexism.
I would argue that homophobia and transphobia stems from sexism, and you get the impression that they were transphobic against May Marigold.
Yes. And so that's the only thing. Well, no, I thought that the whole thing with May is that the parents...
I wasn't their son, and I would never be their daughter. Like, it kind of implies that they didn't accept her as a daughter.
I thought it was because she went down to Mantle.
I mean, but like in that monologue she had...
Do you think it's coding, though, that was supposed to be the implication? Because I thought it was
that was the implication that I got.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know. But anyway, either way, yeah, so that's the thing, right? Is that you wouldn't have a boarding school for girls if there was no notion of what is ladylike.
Yes.
Right? And so that's the only thing that, I don't know, it's not a big deal because most fantasy worlds still have sexism and racism and homophobia, right? To an extent. And so, but it kind of bothers me because that was at least the impression that a lot of us got for a long time. And that's still on the wiki. So I think that there must have been a source for that somewhere, that somebody had said that at some point and it didn't work out. You know what I mean? Because I think that it was because the girls and the boys shared dorms. And so there was this idea of if there's co-ed, there is no... that was like part of the egalitarian effort, was making the dorms even co-ed, that they weren't split by gender, because that was irrelevant. But then you have stuff like this where it's a girls' boarding school. If they made it a co-ed boarding school where boys also learned how to be ladylike, because you could have just made this where characters learned how to be rich, right? How to be upper society. You didn't need to make it ladylike. They could have made it upper society instead. So I guess that's my criticism, is it didn't, because I feel like that there's interesting subtext here with, you know, this boarding school is teaching all these women to be seen and not heard, but not for the reason you think, but for the reason in order to spy
so
and connive and leave society. So I like that subversion. I actually really like that.
But the pretense wouldn't even exist.
Yes, and so I think that they wanted to make a commentary like that, that the idea is, oh, you know, like upper society ladies are seen but not heard, but actually the upper society ladies are the ones that are running everything, precisely because people underestimate them. I actually like that for a concept. Like, I like that, like, you know what I mean? I like that messaging almost. I like that twist and that subversion, and that, like, you know, you think that...
like, the typically feminine tropes are not proactive,
and that femininity is actually powerful.
Yeah, in a proactive way.
Like sewing, for example. Neo
it's not
uses
passive,
that later.
It's active.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, the things that you ascribe to femininity, like cooking and sewing and the other stuff that they do, ballet or, like, acrobatics or stuff, like, that is actually... relevant to her being powerful. And so I like that idea that, like, you know, overly feminine things can be a strength, right? Can be powerful, and things like that. But it doesn't really make sense in Remnant, is all I'm saying, right?
Or the pretense of it doesn't quite make sense. Yeah,
exactly. And so I feel like it would have been better, maybe, like, I guess I don't want to say better because I feel like this message is good. I like this message. I like the subversion. In terms of the world, though,
it doesn't mesh with what they've said once. At this point, I don't think we should even... I mean, it's funny. It's awkward because I remember it because we were there, but at this point, I think they've kind of struck that from the record.
Because I like this, and I don't think that a co-ed school would be better because this message matters more. Yeah. Right? But in terms of the world building,
there's
a co-ed school would make more sense.
That they imply.
Yeah, it seems like that there's an opposite school or something, and so I'm just like, what is happening?
But the weird thing is that later on they mention how two of the girls are dating in there.
Yeah, so they're still.
So it's like the implication of an all-girls school is the assumption that everyone's heterosexual and they wouldn't fuck each other and have kids. But there's the entire, like, they're just like, yeah, people are fucking here. I mean, I suppose they've always had it. Gender segregated.
So I guess what you're saying is that the assumption of a high society school...
The reasons why we would have the schools shouldn't
you become high society to get a husband. However, there are lesbians here, so that part didn't make... You know what I mean? I guess that's what you're saying, right?
That's what I'm going for.
The all-girls school is just... I don't know. Like,
it's the same thing where it's just like...
But that's the whole thing, right? It's not for fucking, right? It's not to catch a husband. You know what I mean? Like,
no, or like to
be a criminal.
Or to not have sex with a man, or to stay away from men.
Yes, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, the school exists to train girls how to be criminals.
It's like what you were saying about the Sigmund Freud. Yeah. They introduced something in our world that doesn't quite make sense in their world.
And so I know what you mean. Like, in, like, say Bridgerton, for example. Like, these girls have their lessons in their debuts to find a husband. That's the purpose of an upper society school a lot of the time, is to teach girls womanly house things.
Womanly charms.
You know, exactly. But instead, this school is for crime. But maybe that's why. Maybe in the case of Remnant, even the parents know this school isn't to catch a husband. And so that's why...
Maybe, but then again, like, a bunch of people
That's why there's nothing heterosexual in here. Does that make sense? You know
I guess so.
Maybe that's the reason.
But, like, Lisa Lavender and that girl that worked with Senior, Haezong, they didn't know that there are things. So it's like,
that is true. But one of them's a criminal, so maybe they knew about the crime, but not about the data collection. you could
Who
say.
knows?
But
then the
Lisa
data
maybe
collection
didn't
was
get that
kind of
far.
a crime.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Poor
so
Lisa.
here's something interesting since we're talking about heterosexuality, okay? Neo says the headmaster was smart, sexy, and dangerous, okay? And here's the thing. Like,
I mean, she already has two-toned. Why can't she be bi?
that could be admiring, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I can acknowledge people are sexy, but
Right.
like not in a way
but
that
Neo
implies I
finds
want to
her
bite into it.
impressive and charming specifically, right? Like, those are direct statements. And so, is that not gay?
Neo's just kind of like Neo. I guess that could be like maybe she likes girls a little bit.
Because, like, I don't know. Like, I get it. Like, girls find other girls pretty, right? You look under an Instagram comment, like, my sister posts something and all of her girlfriends are like, oh my god, slay, queen. Oh my god, you look so hot. Like, they're all just compliment. No, I'm not. I'm just saying that's the culture among teenage girls. Well, my sister's not a teenager anymore, but among
young adults,
women, right? They post
we are in
on
our
Twitter,
early 20s. We still count this.
Exactly. They post on Instagram about how sexy their friends are. Normal, right? But there's something about this where I'm just like, I think that this is beyond. I don't know. I just feel like that this is beyond.
Well, she's kind of trans coded anyways.
Yeah.
So like, why not make her like bi?
Yeah. So I just feel like that this specific thing is beyond just. You admire the person. I think Neo finds her attractive.
I'm down for her being bi. It could go either way.
Because this reminds me a lot of when Coco found Glinda attractive.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Right? And so is that not very similar to this?
I guess so. Maybe, you know what, that's what it is. Maybe Neo just needs to meet Coco, and then she can be, like, ruthless, but in the context of, like, modeling.
I don't know. And so I think
she could be like that character from The Devil Wears Prada.
I think that this is a little gay. I think Neo's bi. We're gonna make a whole video about that, by the way, just because of this one specific scene. So the headmaster is Beatrix Browning, and I think Beatrix is interesting because it reminds me of Bellatrix from
Strange.
Yeah,
from Harry Potter?
because doesn't she take over the school at one point or something?
No, Snape.
No, because she's the one who wears pink all the time, right?
No, that's not Bellatrix Lestrange.
Oh,
that's
who's that?
Oh god, that's Umbridge.
Oh.
Dolores Umbridge.
Never mind.
It's my great shame that I know this much about Harry Potter.
I thought that she was supposed to be kind of inspired by Umbridge, but that's because I thought Umbridge had the B name.
Yeah, no, you get an Umbridge vibe from her, but no, the name isn't quite.
So anyway.
When I hear
Incorrect.
Beatrix, I hear Dominatrix.
Oh my god. So the mom,
it's just kind of
the mom fakes some heartfelt goodbyes and leaves. So the mom basically fake cries and fucks off, right?
But then is she really sad, or is just like she is, but Neo can't appreciate that, like she's like
I don't think
shitty,
she is.
but also
she said she wiped fake tears from her eyes.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Maybe it's more performative. I could see it both ways.
So, yes, so she finds the headmaster charming. It is better to be seen and not heard. It's often better not to be seen at all. And so I wrote down, isn't this a bit sexist, right? But obviously, we know that
it gets a little more complex later on.
Yes, but at that point, I was like, E.C. Myers? Sir? What? Excuse me, sir? But yeah, I think that, like, it's fine. Like, it's definitely, fine now, And so now...
I think that the second that Neo goes to that boarding school, it like picks up a lot.
Oh yeah,
so
now
part
we're
of me feels like the Neo stuff should have been more like less like her adventures running around
back and forth, maybe,
and more of like Matilda or like not Matilda. She doesn't go to a boarding school, but like learning to like rule the roost in the boarding school.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that's
I don't know.
Interesting point for sure. And I think that what they could have done is maybe had Neo start at the school and then show her childhood throughout.
Yeah, I think we discussed that in the spoiler.
So I think even if they didn't flesh out like her being a boss bitch at the school or whatever that you're suggesting, which I think is still an interesting idea, by the way. But I still think that they could have, segmented things differently.
They could found a different way.
Yeah. And so let's talk about chapter 10 and then get the fuck out of here, okay? Because we're tired. So yes, we'll do part 2 next week, I guess, if you guys are watching this, in real time, as they say. So the cops are done in Looney. And so it's Dan Dunn And I was like, is that autocorrect? Because they call him Dan at one point, and I was like, oh dear, like, is that a mistake?
Oh, is it? I didn't even pick, like, when they said
I looked
Blake
it up.
or Black instead of Blake. But...
I looked it up, and Dan Dunn is a person. Like, it's a character. It's a detective in a book. So I think that I think Dan's his first name. I don't think it was a typo.
My guess is that I headcanon was that they're the same detectives that Bernie and Matt played.
But they're not real cops, remember?
I know they're not, but one of them wanted to be the detective, so like he ended up being the detective. And that's why
you think they actually went to police school after Hi died? You know what I mean?
Or like that. Not that like they actually went, but that they were cops. They were just cops like that were corrupt.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
And so that they ended up, after that happened, one of them became the detective, and like those really like shitty like, man, you see, detective that chase after.
I understand what you mean, but yeah, they are fake cops. They are High's
button sold.
Dudes. I don't know.
Boys.
Yeah, we don't know if they're actual cops or not. They're probably not, though, because they say something later where it's like an actual cop wouldn't do this. What the fuck, right? You know what I mean? And so then Roman offers them donuts.
Which I feel like is like a dig. And he does this to show
that they were able to sneak past them.
Yeah.
Right? So he's basically, because at first they're like, oh, they could be poison. We're not eating that. And he's like, no, they're not poison. They're evidence that I was able to sneak past you. But they're actually poison.
They were drugged,
I know,
right?
But it's you know, he tricked them into thinking that it wasn't. And so the other guy is called Matt Looney. And I looked that up. And it was apparently a fairy tale still inspired by something. Anyway, and so they aren't cops. They're just henchmen. The restaurant is called Just Right. And so I thought...
Which is like a Goldilocks reference, I'm guessing?
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, so that's Junior? But it's not Junior.
I thought it was Junior. It's only later that I realized.
His dad.
No, it's his dad.
I didn't realize it at this point either, right? Because Arnold said, oh, yeah, like, Hai Zong is...
Because when you look up Hai Zong,
you
RWBY,
see Junior, because that's his real name, but he's called that because his dad was Hai Zong. Yeah, exactly. And so now we have Carnation, and they're just a chef in the restaurant. And so this reminded me of, like, oh, God, like, what's the nursery rhyme? It's like, da-da-da, Carnation, won't your flowers grow? You know, do you know
Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow?
Yeah, but it's, Carnation is in there, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know.
Anyway.
I only know that one thing.
You know what? That may be an Undertale song, actually. Like
I don't think that's no.
They
Carnation in
Undertale uses the nursery rhyme to
I played Undertale.
use a song.
I don't remember that.
Well, it may be a fan song though.
Oh,
it may be something like that. Anyway, I'll show you after.
My favorite RWBY character is Papyrus.
Haven't you ever heard of Asgore and stuff? Like, yeah, but is there actual singing in the game? Because people have done covers of Asgore where they sing. So they either made up the lyrics themselves,
the thing is that there's
or maybe
like 15
ending
to those games, and I missed a bunch of the dates you were supposed to do.
Anyway, so like, I'll show you after,
experience.
But like, there's a song that is, I guess, in the Undertale community that is inspired by, by the nursery rhyme. So I thought it was supposed to be like, the Carnation reference was to that.
Papyrus is the summer maiden.
Oh my god. Or they could just be using a color name that is easy. But I thought it was connected to the nursery rhymes
Sans is
somehow.
the Lord of Darkness.
Anyway. So he's the biggest crime boss in Vale. So that is I think it's supposed to be
Oh, no, it's XI. Yeah, so that's Shang.
Yeah,
Hai
and
Shang.
so I got that wrong. But I can't read, so don't mind me. So then, oh no, it's Junior's real name, ? Or,
yeah, it was like you trying to work it out.
But then eventually we got it.
But they describe him having like a really big gray beard, and I'm like, well, they didn't. But like, is that like a retcon?
Yeah, but eventually we see Junior later, and that's how we know, right? Crime bosses are businessmen in Vale, LOL. So I guess somebody had said that.
You also got like earlier when Roman is able to escape undetected. He says that a lot of people who live in these nice apartments want to be seen leaving. Like, not seen leaving, or like, be discreet.
And so he got that apartment for that purpose.
So it leaves me with the impression of the world building that Mistral is seedy and everyone knows it, whereas Vale is seedy and no one wants to admit it.
Yeah.
And it's slowly
this apartment
you realize
was
how
almost
seedy
made
it
on
is.
purpose.
Yeah. And then the cops
Roman
are dirty.
It to be able to
and
sneak
like
around.
Neo's parents are dirty, so it's just...
Well, these cops may not be real cops
or are
again,
not real
Hunter,
cops,
right?
but
We don't
whatever
know.
the case.
So Hai Zhao wants Roman to work for him, but Roman wants Hai Zhao to work for Roman, right? And so Hai Zhao is like, no, like, what the fuck? I'm not gonna work for you, you know? And so then Roman did poison the donuts after all, which I thought was pretty funny. And so they fight. Chef and Roman start to fight. So that's Carnation is the chef and they fight.
And he's big, scary dude with a meat cleaver.
That reminds me of Chef from Total Drama Island.
Oh,
and I just
Chef
want to know.
Hatchet?
I just
Oh,
want to
man.
know if E.C. Myers was inspired
Watch Total Drama
by Total
Island?
Drama Island for this
Oh,
character.
man.
Anyway, and so so what catches Roman out here, if that makes sense, what exposes Roman is that while they're fighting, Roman like rips off his jacket right to square up, right? Like he starts to do that, but then he sees Roman's fucking spider tattoo on his shoulder, and so I thought that was so funny because that's kind of a subversion of it, right? Like you think like, oh, let's dance,
and I think
take
they
off
fight
the
a little
jacket,
bit.
right? But Hi's like, stop. I see your tattoo. So I thought that was so funny. I thought that was great. Like I loved that because instead of it being like, oh, I take off my jacket so I can win the fight, it was no, the jacket was covering your tattoo and now you're fucked, right? And so then he gets it re-tattooed with a pumpkin at the end of the chapter.
And that's where he gets his insignia from.
Yes.
His insignia is the mean-looking pumpkin.
Yes, from the tattoo lady had suggested.
And earlier you get the impression that like the badges are 3 circles and Neo's thing is 3 like ice cream things.
Yes,
so I wonder
the pins from the Girls'
the pins
Academy.
From the Miss,
Exactly.
Beats Academy. So we kind of like slowly learn where their accoutrement comes from, and you think it's like a personal choice, but it's not. He was just covering up a bad tattoo.
I mean, I think for Neo, she took it and made it her own.
Yeah, made her own.
But like for Roman, the lady's the one that suggested a pumpkin, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of funny. Because when you think about like what could
turn
cover
a pumpkin into a.
I don't know.
Maybe it's like the angry, like the odd angles of the eyes.
Yeah, something like, or maybe it's because of the legs. Could be the pumpkin rinds.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So maybe that's how they did it. Maybe not a jack-o'-lantern.
I kind of want to rewatch Volume 6 to see what all the spiders look like to see if we can get their tattoo.
I don't know if they had them
or
in
if you
Volume
saw
6.
It,
but anyway, so how do you say his name again? We'll just say Hi. Hi knows the spiders are forever, so Roman either ran or thinks he's trying to expand the turf. So he's basically like, no, you can't. You couldn't be working on your own. Miss Malachite wouldn't let you, so either you're running away and I can turn you in, or you're still working for her and you want to expand the turf. So basically...
So this person whom I don't know is my mom?
Exactly. So, well, no, this is the husband.
Oh,
right?
My ex-wife.
Exactly. So here's what's interesting about that, though, right? Is that he's like, oh, I know she's putting her web through Remnant, right? And so it's almost like his own paranoia makes him refuse to see the reality of the situation that Roman ran away. But he does suggest that, like, either you ran away or you're working for her. But he is so, like, in his head that no, Roman couldn't have possibly ran away. He must be working for Miss Malachite and, like, you know, he's a spy to expand the turf. Like, he's so in his head that he doesn't, like, default to no, maybe Roman just ran away, bro, and maybe you could just turn him in, right?
Your ex-wife, it gets to you.
Yeah, and so then he says a museum here, a shipping company there, apparently, right? So Miss Malachite has a museum in Vale. Why? How is that going to make any money? You know what I mean? Anyway.
Well, I guess it's the idea that you bring in, like, you kind of clean your money by having cash differences.
And so that's what I'm saying, right? And so this is why this feels so much like a divorce, right? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, you know, like, I gave you the house, but then I noticed, like, or like, imagine that there's a divorced couple and one is in like the top level of the house and one's in the basement, right? Like a basement apartment, okay? And then they start to see their spouses or their ex-spouses things creep up into the basement apartment or like on the lawn. You know, it's like, oh, you know, like we split this house up into 2 so we could both live here even though we're divorced, and like it was a bath towel here and laundry being in the machine there. Like that's how this kind of feels in a way, right? So Roman is still allowed to live because Hi wants him to take a message to Malachite, who he still thinks that Roman works for, right? And so then he reworks the spider tattoo into a pumpkin. It's gonna hurt. It always does when the past catches up to you. So I thought that was pretty funny. I really like that dialogue. That's the kind of like oomph dialogue that I really like of the RWBY books. And this also reminds me of that, like, oh, I live to die another day. That's what it was. I finally remembered. That's what he said.
Okay.
Yeah, not to fight another day, to die a different day, basically. And that is, I think, where
about
we
halfway through.
are, because they go meet Roman soon,
Yes.
and so I feel like that we should just, because I think I think that basically there's one more chapter
And
before
then
they
it's,
actually
like,
get there,
more
but
or
we
less
may
the
as well
halfway
just
point.
do
Yeah.
this. This is more or less, again, halfway point in my notes as well, if you guys can see. So we will do chapter 11 next week. Thank you for attending Calxyn's Royal Book Club today. All right. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.